Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто воде всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 902 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And today we're hearing that Ukraine's going even further into mainland Russia as they really struggle to ward off the Ukrainians. And also, Putin is once again in a panic. And how do we know? Because surely he's not calm. So it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And we have incredibly major news to cover over the past 48 hours. In the course of 48 hours, the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to capture another 1,000 Russian prisoners. In total, at this point, the Ukrainians have captured nearly an entire Russian brigade that is currently sitting inside of Ukrainian custody and will be moving to prisoner of war camps fairly soon. We have also been able to get major news of Ukraine opening up new fronts within the area of the Battle of the Frontier, or the Frontier Campaign, as we are starting to hear that Ukrainian forces have begun a breakthrough near to the town of Kolotolovka yesterday, and it appears that progress may have been made today, although operational security reasons do not really allow us to talk much about the ongoing presence of Ukrainian forces around the town of Kolotolovka and also Pver further south. However, we do have major news coming from the Kursk battle, as we have heard the Ukrainian forces have rapidly advanced, capturing the town of Giri, and we have also started to hear that Ukrainian forces are continuing to inflict very high casualties on the Russian forces in all directions, all the way from the area of Ralisk and all the way over to the area of Kurchatov and also the city of Kursk as well. We have also started to hear possible rumors from Russian sources that some Russian volunteer units, also known as some Rosguardia elements, may be defecting to the Ukrainian side, either surrendering without putting up a fight, or maybe even attempting to join the Ukrainian forces in the fight in the Kursk Oblast. Although at the moment, we are having to publish that as hearsay because we don't have actual video or picture evidence of such a thing occurring yet. Mass surrenders, we have plenty of video evidence of. Them joining the Ukrainian side, we have no video evidence of that yet. At the exact same time, Ukrainian forces are conducting a heavy bombardment of Tekhino. We have also seen the Ukrainian Air Force now active over the skies of Kursk, providing vital air support to the Ukrainian forces on the ground as they continue to advance towards Kurchatov and Kursk as well. While that's happening, a major airstrike has occurred in the city of Voronezh, as the Ukrainians have attempted to knock out another military airbase within the town of Voronezh, hoping to knock out any Russian Air Force abilities that may be nearby to the Kursk region. At the exact same time, we also heard of a major explosion happening in one of the largest cities in the Russian Federation, Yekaterinburg. I believe it is the fourth largest one in Russia. The explosion was incredibly large, it was very significant, and it appears to have caused a considerable amount of damage. Meanwhile, out of the Yekaterinburg area and inside of Ukraine, the battles in the areas of Vovchansk, Avdiivka, and Bakhmut continue on as the Ukrainian forces try and inflict very high casualties, but Russian forces are making some advances near the area of Pokrovsk and may end up creating a Battle of Pokrovsk here very soon. We also did get to hear of a brand new Ukrainian offensive on the Kinburn Spit, and it appears the Ukrainian special forces are spearheading some sort of an initiative to engage and destroy the limited number of Russian forces on the Kinburn Spit and to try and knock them out, possibly causing a distraction for the Russian forces within the Harrison theater and trying to make sure that those forces aren't as easily able to pack up and leave for Kursk like others in other parts of the front line have been. But we have an absolutely... Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this. We are hearing that, of course, a war in the Middle East is still coming. I know this is like day 30 of hearing that, but we are still hearing that it will be coming around. We have been seeing Hezbollah conducting larger rocket attacks than usual. We saw one in the Upper Galilee area, which was significant last night, and we are now also starting to hear that U.S. armed forces, U.S. ground forces, are in significant numbers in the area, and according to the publicly published number, it is somewhere around 40,000 troops at this moment. Once again, showing that the United States is getting ready to defend, possibly, its allies within the Middle East. We've also been able to get a little bit of news on China's regards and statements about the Ukrainian invasion in Kursk. But we have...
Are you sure that's all the news for today? Because that seems pretty light. Today was a pretty slow news day, if I say so myself.
What the hell do you mean, man? Like this, I'm hardly even covering like the main
joking,
thing.
Man.
Like, I was about to be like, man, that's not good. I was about to be like, but anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into the major breaking news today. which it actually happened about 36 hours ago, but considering that we're covering the past 48 hours of the war, this is probably one of the biggest developments that we have seen so far in the past 48 hours, is the opening of a new Ukrainian front within northern Belgorod. Belgorod has been a majorly important oblast for the Russian Federation throughout the entirety of the war. At the beginning of the war, Belgorod was a basing and staging area, so that way the Russian armed forces could try and rapidly advance onto Kharkiv, besiege it, and capture the city. That did not work, and so Belgorod then became the major staging area for Russian forces conducting a defense of the ground that they had taken around the city of Kharkiv, and then later on in the war, Belgorod has also been used to launch a major armed offensive into the Kharkiv Oblast again, which was quickly stopped around the Vovchansk area and has grinded down to a deadly stop at this point, with Russian forces being attritioned heavily within this area. Belgorod has also been a major question for a lot of pro-Ukrainian viewers, and wondering if the Ukrainian army will ever try and use the Kursk offensive to circle around all the way through Kursk and then try and cut off any further reinforcements heading into Belgorod or anything else along those lines. From what we understand, that may be the case, because just 36 hours ago or so, we did get the information that Ukrainian forces were engaging in heavy firefights near to the area of Kolotolovka, and now that brings us up to the present day at this point. It was not that long ago, it was actually Saturday, that we heard that Ukrainian forces had advanced into the town of Pver and had captured it. According to the information that we have, this was a battalion-sized element, which is a very important thing to note. When we saw the original Ukrainian invasion into the area around Sudzha in Kursk, it was only a battalion-sized element that initially crossed the border. The Russians didn't consider it that big of an ordeal. Many people, pretty much everyone out there, dismissed it as a Free Russian Army incursion, and no one really put a lot of stock into it. But once that single battalion cleared the way through the minefields and also the Dragon's Teeth in this area and made it to the outskirts of Sudzha, multiple Ukrainian brigades then flooded across the border and are now inside of Kursk up to the very present day, which is about 7 or 8 days into the offensive. Right now, well, actually several days ago on Saturday, that very same thing happened in Belgorod, and the Ukrainian battalion crossed over into Pver. We saw no Russian reaction to this incursion, and at this very moment, Ukraine actually still occupies and controls the city, well, the small village of Pver right along the Ukrainian-Russian border. When we covered that on Saturday, we said that there were two possible likely outcomes that would come from this incursion. One would be that the Russians would take this incredibly seriously, seeing that there's probably another major Ukrainian offensive that is going to be happening in this area, and they would divert a lot of forces that were inside the Kursk Oblast and desperately trying to defend the area from the Ukrainian armed forces. They would have to divert some of those down into Belgorod, making a fairly strong defense in the Belgorod area, at least in the short-term opening of that battle, but creating a heavy weakness for the Russian armed forces in Kursk, as the Russian defensive forces there, if this move was made, would probably be outnumbered to the point that no effective defense could ever be made by the Russian army. They would only be able to conduct really delaying actions more so than anything, and just pray that more reinforcements would arrive before the Ukrainians were able to take Kurchatov or start to besiege the city of Kursk. There was also another likely option, this was our second option at the time, that this may be a Ukrainian ruse. They were conducting the exact same type of a border breach as before, like in Kursk, and they're hoping that the Russians would consider this a major breakthrough when it never was intended to be so. And if that was the case, then the Russians would divert reinforcements into this area, but the Ukrainians never had a plan of conducting a major offensive, and there really were no forces down here that would be running into a brick wall at this point. And so, for that reason, the Russians will have screwed themselves over, because the Ukrainians would have made it look through this deception that there was going to be a major offensive. Out of those two options, it appears that the Russians went with the latter, and they thought that this was nothing more than some sort of a ruse by the Ukrainian armed forces, and that this would not be a major invasion force, and that there were no offensive forces backing up the Ukrainians that had entered the town of Pver. They were wildly wrong, because just 2 days after that, on Monday, which was yesterday, the Ukrainian forces began to barrage and attack the border checkpoint at Kolotolovka. This was also something else, and if you want to go back to that stream when we were talking about the Belgorod incursion or the video, this was something that I actually brought up. Pver is not a viable beachhead or an anchorhead for a major offensive into Belgorod. It simply does not have the logistical means, or for that matter, the infrastructure ability to support a larger Ukrainian offensive into Belgorod. And so we actually hypothesized on air that if the Ukrainians were going to conduct a major offensive in this area, it was going to be conducted through Kolotolivka. And it's the only paved road in this entire area of northern Belgorod that they could advance across the border on and then start to advance deeper into Belgorod or try and meet up with Ukrainian forces in the south of Kursk. That was exactly what happened, and we were able to get footage at the border checkpoint showing the fighting that was happening here. We're not entirely sure if the people in the video are Ukrainian soldiers or Russians, but this is showing the exact area on the border where the Kolotolivka border checkpoint is inside of Russia. And here's the clip. We can see one soldier advancing here, and it appears that something exploded right there.
Man, right on top of him, basically.
Yeah, pretty much right. I think he actually hit a mine. But we can see others advancing in. And that's the
Man, that is a tough advance right there. That is one of the hardest advances I think I've ever seen on a video.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty tough one right there. We're not entirely sure if these are Ukrainians or Russians. That's why we're not really cracking any jokes. We don't really know who these guys were exactly in the video, but it was showing an actual video and picture evidence proof of a major offensive or a major attack happening at the Kolotolivka border checkpoint. That is a very serious ordeal because it is showing that the Ukrainians are directly assaulting the paved road, and I'll show you all the paved road. You can see it right there. It is clearly paved. That is heading into Kolotolivka. And that paved road then continues on from outside the town and travels deeper into the Belgorod Oblast and to Krasnaya Yoruga, which is the other larger settlement within this area. We also got information a little bit further north and at the tiny village of Perlese, which also has a very small dirt road at it. It's not a major road by any means that could be used at any time of the year for a viable supply route for a larger armed force, but we did get to hear that another major engagement, an attack actually, by Ukrainian tank forces was happening in this area around Presile. This is 10 kilometers or roughly 7 miles north of Kolotolivka when that report came out. We haven't gotten a lot of reports on this situation since, but it is very clear that at that time, the Ukrainians were beginning a border incursion into the area around Kolotolivka from Kolotolivka and 7 miles north, and they were attempting to make a very big invasion area for a new force to move into in this direction. We are still waiting to get additional information at this moment. It is the opening of a second front. Whether it ends up being successful or not is another question, but at the moment, we do know that a major breach has been made in the Belgorod area from Kolotolivka and north, and it looks like another Ukrainian major breakthrough is going to be happening in this area. A very big ordeal, because if the Ukrainians start to conduct a major breakthrough here, none of the Russian forces that have been moved into this area are in this direction in northern Belgorod. All of them have been moved in between the area of Rilisk and Kursk and are creating a defensive perimeter in this area. We understand that there's not really a lot of Russians down here in the Belayska district or the Belovsky district, whatever you would like to call it. We don't see a lot of them here, and so we're assuming that the Russians may end up creating the E-105, the major highway here, as their defensive perimeter inside of Kursk, at least for the moment. They might start to change that later if they get a larger amount of available forces in the region. They're probably going to try and constrict the Ukrainians where they are and stop them from advancing deeper into Russia, but still, at the moment, that's what we're understanding the situation to be. And so none of those forces are even close to being in the area of Kolotolovka. This means that Russian forces will once again have to be further diverted from the Vovchansk direction and out of the area and towards the area of Kolotolovka to try and stop this offensive, and maybe even all the way from the area of Presile or Perlese, just north of Kolotolovka, and all the way south to Peraz to stop any kind of a possible Ukrainian breakthrough. This could take up a large amount of manpower and once again tie up a lot of Russian forces with the defense of Russia instead of the offensive inside of Ukraine, which could end up producing some incredibly positive results for the Ukrainian armed forces, as they will be dealing with Russian forces that are completely depleted in frontline numbers and also completely exhausted in terms of strategic reserves. So this is a very good picture to look at. But a lot of people have been talking about the Ukrainian armed forces and what they've been doing inside of Kursk, and they have been doing wildly well. I cannot overstate this enough, that capturing about 1,000 prisoners in 24 hours is a really huge deal. It is unbelievable. That is an entire battalion, well, about 3/4 of a battalion roughly per day. That is an incredibly big deal because it is showing that the Russian resistance is either heavily demoralized or they're getting overrun so rapidly that they're being encircled and they're really being faced with no other option than surrender. Either way, the picture is unfolding to be a very positive one for the Ukrainian armed forces that are inside of this area and are continuing to conduct this offensive. We have gotten a load of video and picture evidence from the area of Kursk, and it is showing that the Ukrainians are doing wildly well. But we've also gotten a lot of video and picture evidence from other areas inside of Russia that is showing that the Ukrainians are starting to conduct maybe a larger series of attacks, maybe even an entire campaign inside of Russia to counter the one that's been happening in Ukraine by Russia for almost 3 years at this point. And that actually takes us into the town of Voronezh. Voronezh is a little ways away from Kursk, and not really that far actually. By the road, it's about roughly 100 miles, 110 miles away. Approximately. They're not really that far away anymore from the active front line, considering that the active front line, from what we understand, has made it up to Lyubomovka, just south of the town of Chermolshnoy, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, where the intersection of the E38 and the R200 is. So they're not that far away. They're maybe about 130 miles away from an active Ukrainian front line at this point. And it does seem as though the Ukrainians are trying to knock out a very vital ability of the Russians that may end up getting used at this point in the battle and from here on. And we were able to hear that major explosions were rocking the town of Voronezh just a few hours ago. This literally came out 3 hours before the stream went live, and so here's some of the footage we got of the explosions and fires that broke out in Voronezh. And let me turn up that audio really quickly.
Man, looks like they're having fun out here in Voronezh. It looks like they're having a little bit of a bonfire out here. You know what I mean?
Man, they're just having a little bit of a grilling. You know what I mean?
But I guess the Ruskies are getting grilled today. Blyat.
Oh, those Ruskies, they get grilled. And moving on from that clip, dang, that looks like an explosion in air over the town of Voronezh.
Вот это, наверное, ПВОшка.
And our third clip.
Damn.
Pretty freaking large explosions over Voronezh. We also got to see a little bit more footage of the explosions over the town. This one's a different clip entirely. I believe I remember correctly, I had one of these as a backup just in case if some of them got deleted.
Еще один взрыв. Ух, нихера себе. Еще один. Вот тебе и уже на Воронеж полетели. Еще один.
He's pretty calm for the city to be being attacked like it is.
Yeah.
Еще один. Я в шоке. Ну тоже, да? Уже на Воронеж. Да?
Oh, Blyat, the city is being bombed, Blyat. I don't know what to do.
He's like, bad things happening. He's like, very bad things happening outside. But we did get to hear even more explosions. This is the same clip. This is the one I was talking about as a backup. So we're not going to be showing that one because we already showed that one on the Twitter post that we had from this area. But the explosions were significant, and it appears that it was a fairly large attack. From what we know at the moment, at least according to preliminary information that we have not been able to confirm, it appears that the primary target of this attack was this airfield inside of southern Voronezh. From what we understand, this at the moment is being used by the Russian Air Force. We believe there may be a fighter bomber brigade or a fighter bomber wing that is based out of this airport or this military airfield at this point, and that may be what the Ukrainians were targeting. We don't really know that specifically for sure. There are a whole bunch of things that really haven't been confirmed. For example, geolocation, for that matter, hasn't really been done that well, at least throughout the course of that information coming out now, and we haven't really been able to do a lot either because the footage is in the middle of the night, and so you can't really get a lot of landmarks to be able to geolocate stuff off of. There is another possible target across the river and in this area, which is the aerodrome Predacha. We have been able to hear that this may have been a target as well, as from what we understand, they do manufacture aircraft here at this plant. And from what I remember correctly, I believe this may be where they either refurbish or manufacture brand new Tu-160s, if I'm remembering that correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, though, because I'm not really sure if it's this aircraft manufacturing facility or another one in another part of Russia. But still, It does seem as though a major attack has happened in the area of Voronezh, and the Ukrainians are once again trying to knock out some form of a Russian warfighting ability before it can be used in Kursk against the Ukrainian forces there. We also got to hear of a really huge explosion within the area of Yekaterinburg, and this one was a little bit mysterious. We don't really know much about it because they say that it was a massive explosion. Some people say that it may have been on the Russian military central military district headquarters. We can't confirm that for sure, but there was a report of an explosion, and then a heavy fire started to blaze within the area of Yekaterinburg. We are still trying to get...
correct me if I'm wrong, but Yekaterinburg is where most of the Russian military-industrial complex is, like mainly one of their manufacturing centers for the military. Isn't that right?
It seems as though it would be, because from what we've heard, Yekaterinburg and a lot of the cities within the Ural Mountains usually are the ones that do a lot of war production, because that's where it was moved during the times of Stalin, and since then it never really left the area because it's largely safe from missile and bombing attacks, at least during that era. So we do believe that there is a lot of military industry inside of Yekaterinburg.
Interesting. So a lot of very rich targets there, I guess you could say.
It's a target-rich kind of an environment. You know what I mean? It's that kind of environment that you just got a lot of pickings in. You know what I mean? And it looks like the Ukrainians picked something. We don't know what, but they picked something to hit inside of Yekaterinburg, and it did get hit. But moving on out of Yekaterinburg, we have also heard something else today. We have once again heard Putin on television. Now, I didn't include this on our map tonight, and I didn't include it in this video because I couldn't really find a lot that was really well translated, and a lot of it. So we would only be showing y'all like 20-second clips, and it would all be subtitles and stuff like that. So we didn't include them. But one thing that I did hear is that the Russians said, the invasion of our sovereign lands, it is wrong. You should never do this. And the fact that they are trying to capture a nuclear power plant and hold it hostage, this is wrong, Bliat. Like, said all that stuff. Like, Putin actually said it on TV. The same things that the Russians have done in Ukraine. Now that the Ukrainians might do it against the Russians, it's just uncalled for, Bliat. It's wrong, Bliat. What the hell are they doing, Bliat? This is bad. And it's like, that is absolutely crazy. But we have been able to hear another thing, that Ukraine has confirmed that Russia is pulling frontline troops away from Ukraine and into mainland Russia. And from what we understand, it's actually a decent bit of them. Multiple brigades are being pulled from different areas of the front line, and they're all being relocated into the area around Kursk, and we don't really know about any of them heading into Belgorod at this point. All that we can confirm is that most of them are probably going into Kursk. But a lot of people have been throwing in their opinions about this. Is this going to start impeding any kind of Ukrainian offensive abilities in this area? Or are the Ukrainians going to get pinned down because the numbers advantage that they have right now may not be there when all of these Russian reinforcements arrive and dig in? What will the situation look like? And a lot of people seem really optimistic about this, but Matthew, what are people thinking? Are they thinking that the Ukrainians can still make progress even if the Russians try and pull everything available to defend this area, or are they thinking it'll be a stalemate, or are they thinking that they might even get pushed completely out of Kursk? What are folks thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like 65% of the audience said Ukraine will be able to make some progress, while 20% said only time will tell, and 9% said Ukraine will still be in a stalemate, even with the troops being pulled off the front line. And me personally, I'd have to be with the 65%. I think Ukraine will make progress, because with the frontline troops moved away from the Ukrainian front line and back into mainland Russia, that will, of course, free up the Ukrainians to make some advances and into basically their occupied territory that they've been trying to get. Well, I have a stutter fest right there, but anyways, Enforcer, what's say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I think that the Ukrainians will be able to make some progress, but it really depends on the amount of forces that are brought in by the Russians and whether they try and fight the Ukrainians out of the area or whether they just try and defend the area and eventually attrit the Ukrainian forces until they're partially depleted and then start an offensive to push them out. Given what we know at the moment, we still understand that the Ukrainians probably have a 3-to-1 advantage over the Russians in terms of numbers. This is actually important because usually when conducting an offensive, you usually want a 3-to-1 advantage over your opponent, meaning for every one soldier that they have, you have about 3 of them on the field. Usually, just numerically, you're able to overwhelm your opponent and have a lot more wiggle room with what you can do. Some forces, like the Chinese, they actually look for a 5-to-1 advantage over their opponents, which is a very, very large advantage, meaning that they are a lot more cautious in terms of conducting offensive actions because they require such a massive, overwhelming force to be able to take on their opponent and then try and destroy them in detail. So going off of that, and assuming that the Russians are looking for some kind of a defender's ability of a 1 to 3 number at the moment, or something larger than that, they don't really have the available manpower right now to be able to effect a proper defense. They're going to be able to conduct slowing attacks or slowing battles, but they're not going to be able to really stop the Ukrainian forces. They will keep going deeper if they want to. But with more Russian brigades moving in, if the Russians moved in approximately another 2 brigades into the Kursk region at this moment, they may be able to slow down the Ukrainian offensive and then eventually bring it to a complete stop, because there really will be no way at that point, at least in a numbers battle, for the Ukrainians to outnumber the Russians enough across the front to be able to keep advancing. But at the moment, that picture is not real. That's a hypothetical picture in the future. If the Russians end up getting a 1-to-1 numbers advantage with the Ukrainians, that means it's going to be a dead-on stalemate in between the two sides. The Ukrainians will not be able to advance, and the Russians also would never be able to counterattack and push the Ukrainians out of the territory that they claimed. The Russians would then have to find a way at that point to get a 3-to-1 advantage or a 5-to-1 advantage if they were working off of a Chinese kind of a stratagem model to be able to conduct a counteroffensive to then try and push Ukraine out. And even then, if the Ukrainians dig in heavily, set up a large amount of defensive areas like minefields, that numbers advantage may not even be enough to really push the Ukrainians out at this point. So right now, I would say the Ukrainians certainly have the chance to keep advancing further into the Kursk Oblast, but if the picture starts to change and the numbers advantage that Ukraine has right now isn't really there, we'll probably see that the Ukrainian offensive does come to a slow and then a stop, probably outside of Kurchatov, maybe. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, on what will be happening in this area. But still, beyond that, things are going incredibly good right now. I cannot overstate how good they are going inside of the Kursk Oblast. And so, with that in mind, we're now going to be moving through all of the stuff that has happened in Kursk. Pretty much everything that we've documented over the past 48 hours has happened in the area of the Kursk Oblast and also within Belgorod, although we already covered that. Loads of things have happened. Hundreds of Russian prisoners have been taken. A large amount of Russian losses have been documented. Some Ukrainian losses have been documented as well. And we are seeing some interesting clips coming out confirming that the Ukrainians are in some areas. Once again, doubling over in affirmation that they are there, and also we are getting some more information that they're doing pretty well all over. But moving on from that, and moving from the most westerly area of Ukrainian battle actions at this point, and then moving as far south as we can towards the Belovsky district, that is how we're going to be covering the news so far. So moving on into Tetkino, we have been able to see that the Ukrainian Air Force is active in the area and has been conducting some pretty decent aerial bombardments around Tetkino. And we can see right here some of those aerial bombs landing on the town, like right there. And we'll probably be able to geolocate where this is because there's a pretty sizable sort of a industrial building over here that will be pretty easy to locate the position off of. And we see the aerial bombs still coming in. And it appears that they're trying to bombard and destroy Russian forces that are within the town of Tetkino. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but very nice to see it slow. And really quickly, moving on into some geolocation around Tetkino, let's find out where the aerial bombs were dropping. And so here's the town of Tetkino. We can already find the large building that was in that video right here. We can also see a little bit of like a dam. I wouldn't really call it a dam. It's more so a break that is meant to produce some water pressure for a running mill. And so that may suggest that there was some sort of a mill in this area at some time, because usually those are made for those reasons. But still, the Ukrainian glide bombs, or the Ukrainian aerial bombs, hit this building right here. It apparently completely destroyed it. And then another building was hit somewhere over here within this area. We're not exactly sure where. They may have been attempting to demoralize the Russians and hit the liquor store, because usually the Russians love liquor, and that would really get a lot of people sad inside of Tetkino if the liquor store was hit. But nevertheless, we were able to confirm those 2 aerial bombs landed and exploded within those areas. And it seems as though, based off of what we're knowing, the Ukrainians are heavily shelling the area, maybe to start moving in, or maybe just to make it look like they are going to move in. It could be a deception of a sort, making it look like the Ukrainians have larger plans within the area of Tetkino, or it may be the fact that they actually have really big plans in the Tetkino area, and they're trying to barrage Russian forces here, so that way there is no viable defense left. Tetkino is a larger town just south of this river, the Reka Siem, and there is only one large bridge that crosses the Reka Siem, which is right here in Glushkovo. Ukrainian forces really aren't that far away because they are currently in the town of Snagost at this moment. This entire area of Russia, south of Koronivo and south of the Reka Siem River, is completely divided from the rest of Russia because of this river. There's only one other bridge in this area, and it's at Kurish, and you can see it right here, but this bridge doesn't really lead anywhere. It doesn't lead to a proper retreat avenue for the Russians in this area. It actually just leads to the villages just north of the river, and then there's no connecting road heading towards the next village of Lomakino from these villages right here. So this bridge is at least strategically insignificant from what we understand. The bridge at Glushkovo, however, is strategically significant. We saw the Ukrainians try and hit the bridge a couple of days ago. It appears that the ordnance that they tried to hit it with missed, and the bridge was not taken out, which means that they may be trying at this point to put pressure on the Russian forces that are in this area at Tetkino and also from the direction of Snagost, making it look like the Russians are about to get squeezed all the way up to Glushkovo and be forced to retreat out of the area. This may be a deliberate kind of a psychological operation by the Ukrainians to make the Russians think that they may end up getting encircled south of the Glushkovo bridge, meaning that they would pretty much get forced into surrendering to the Ukrainians because there's really no way out at that point unless they wanted to fight to the death. That may be the case of what they're trying to do right now, because we still haven't seen in about 48 hours any Ukrainian advance move into this area, but they certainly are making it look like they're getting ready, and the Russians really don't have a lot of retreat avenues out of this area except for the Glushkovo bridge. And so with that, still very interesting to see. We're going to be waiting and watching if the Ukrainians actually conduct any sort of larger offensive actions from Tetkino and Snagost at the same time. But once again, furthering up this hypothesis that I have that the Ukrainians are trying to take this area south of Reka Siem and all the way up to the banks of the Reka, which would be very difficult for the Russians to try and cross again. The Ukrainians also did destroy a KAMAZ near this town of Sukhanovka, which is in the very middle of this area that is south of the Reka River. And so here is the video the picture showing the destroyed KAMAZ, also showing the reach that Ukrainian artillery has in this area, and once again confirming that the Ukrainians may be trying to pressure the Russians in this area specifically with a heavier amount of firepower to try and get them to retreat across the Reka River into Shagarovo before the Ukrainians can actually close in and pretty much either destroy them in detail or force the entire Russian force in this area to surrender, which we assume maybe a couple of companies, maybe a couple of battalions in strength at the greatest. But moving on out of that area and now up towards Rilisk, we also got to see some interesting Russian POV footage. Many of y'all remember that on, on the first day of this reporting week, which would have been Thursday, we got to see that a Russian column was destroyed right around the area of Oktyabrsko, which is just outside and east of Rilisk. We finally got a Russian POV on what was going on up in this area before and after the HIMARS strike obliterated the Russians that were in this column. Oh, sorry, actually, apparently it's a little bit too spicy.
Oh, man, it's too spicy.
Man, it was they were like, nah, too spicy, man, too spicy. But sadly, it was actually a little bit funny because they were joking and laughing on the ride down there, and they were saying that they were going to wipe out the Ukrainians, they were going to kill all of them. Y'all better get ready because we're going to get y'all. And then it clips to the next footage, which is from the same truck after the attack, and everyone's in the back of the truck just dead silent. There's some wounded guys laying down on the bed of the truck, and everyone is just completely lost their fighting spirit immediately and are driving out of Rilisk and back towards Kursk. But sadly, we don't get to show that clip. It's apparently a little bit too spicy to show, but still, once again, showing Russian morale being beaten down live on film. Moving on from that, and a further on down and towards the area of Koronivo, we did get to see some interesting things happening down here, as we got to see more Russian forces surrendering on drone footage, and we can see that right here. And we see the Ukrainians laying the prisoners down. They're going to begin processing them and then move them across the border eventually. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there, but still showing us a pretty interesting sight. The Russians are not really that enthused about fighting. We're just seeing a large amount of them giving up and surrendering. And of course, we have to go over the two possibilities of why they're surrendering. Either they're getting overrun so rapidly that there really is no way for them to fight effectively anymore without pretty much just being destroyed outright, or they have such low morale that every time they meet any kind of Ukrainians in a firefight, they don't even have the will to fight and they just give up. Those are the two kinds of options that we're being faced with. And right now, to be honest with y'all, it doesn't really look like the Ukrainians are rapidly advancing at this point, at least in some specific areas like Koronivo, to the point the Russians would be encircled and overrun to the point they really only have the option of surrender. And so it does look like, at least within the Koronivo direction, the Russians that are fighting the Ukrainians here are so demoralized they simply do not have the will to fight and are giving up instead. Moving on from that and towards Olgovka, we also got to see a PT-91 Twardie within the area as well. The Twardies were provided by Poland, interestingly enough. And we can see some of them on the move in action right here. We're not really sure what brigade these are a part of, but it's apparently a mechanized or armored brigade these tanks are being used in. And we can see the Twardie firing right there. The cameraman had a little bit of a reflex from that one. And we see them showing it once again as the Twardie lays down some heavier firepower in support of the infantry. We can see some kind of a building on fire and burning rapidly over there. And we can see even more Russian prisoners being taken. They are now being led down the street to be processed, or will really transported back towards Sudzha and then be processed as prisoners. We see that they've confiscated all of the Russian weapons as well. They just got them sitting out there in front of the BMP, and that's the end of the clip, but really nice to see. Good to know that the Ukrainians are conducting some really good actions in this area, and once again have a decent amount of heavier support, armored support, to be able to help the infantry in their push forward. We also got to see a damaged Humvee in Kursk. Luckily, the mine that blew up on this thing blew up on the driver's front axle, and it appears to have not breached the internal armor of the Humvee, or really the cab armor of the Humvee. Pretty wild to see, because if many of y'all remember, the Humvees were considered a death trap in Iraq and Afghanistan because the vehicle-based IEDs and the IEDs in general were getting so large that even the well-protected Humvee, at least for a utility vehicle, was not really able to stop the crews from getting killed inside of the Humvees when the IEDs went off. So it's pretty wild to see that this thing ran over an anti-tank mine, which is one of the largest kinds of mines that is used by the Russians, and ended up largely being unscathed. At least the crew ended up being unscathed. The Humvee is a very different story. The entire front was blown off, but the crew inside was fine. Pretty shocking to realize that and see it, but still, once again showing that the Ukrainian forces are taking some losses. Now, I want to make sure to show this during the Kursk offensive. We usually do not show Ukrainian losses inside of Ukraine itself, because this is a pro-Ukrainian channel. There are Ukrainians watching and some soldiers in the Ukrainian armed forces who also watch this show, and we don't want to be constantly putting out demoralizing stuff and then maybe giving people the misconception that it's a slaughter in Russia's favor instead of Ukraine's. But we are going to be showing losses in the Kursk region that we can document, because it's very important that we try and gauge the offensive actions of the Ukrainians and their success. And it appears so far the Ukrainian losses, at least that we can visually confirm, are far lower than Russian losses at this point, still showing that the Ukrainians probably have the initiative in this offensive still. Moving on from that picture of that Humvee, and moving on and into the area around Kromsky-Blicky, or Kromsky-Bicky, which is his real name, we were able to see that the Ukrainians were slamming the Akhmat group in this area with some pretty heavy artillery. Also, by the way, this clip has some Akhmat music. I just thought I'd play a little bit of it for y'all. And we're now going to stop because most of y'all probably have some form of uncurable cancer from that. But still, we can see the Russians moving around, the Akhmat particularly, moving around the small compound. And we see them counting them on screen. We can see the fourth one here. Once again, showing that this is a little bit of an Akhmat stronghold, and here comes the artillery right down on the building, and of course, wiping out the Akhmat within, hopefully. And we see it caused a pretty significant amount of damage. Pretty nice to see, and good to know that the Ukrainians are using a large amount of recon in this area to try and find and destroy Russian forces before the Ukrainians ever make contact with them and fight with them. But with that, we are now going to be moving on into the area of Kamyshovka, where we also got to see a Leopard 1 engineering vehicle once again. We also got to see a lot of other units that are in this area as well. It's pretty interesting to see that the Ukrainians have apparently a large number of these Leopard 1 engineering vehicles within the campaign. It is once again showing that it's a fairly specialized force that is ready to deal with really any kind of obstacle that may slow their advance, because we've seen a load of these things. I cannot overstate that. We also got to see what appears to be a T-72BV, possibly. It has the T-72B armor layout with the Contact 1 ERA tiles, and it also appears to maybe have a BV-style Contact 1 ERA layout for the turret. So this would technically be a T-72B, or you could call it a T-72BV. And we can also see a guy on a motorcycle with a wagon attached to the motorcycle behind it. He's not a part of the Ukrainian army. I just want to make that fairly clear. But moving on from that and into the next picture, we also got to see a couple of Ukrainian Cossack armored cars moving down a road in the area. This was actually one of the pictures we ended up using for the thumbnail today. It's a really cool looking one. And it is nice to see that the Ukrainians are using their own MRAPs and armored cars like this. But to be entirely honest with you all, I think this may be a little bit overkill at this point, because we're not really seeing the Ukrainians get hit a lot by ATGMs, or really artillery for that matter at this point, at least effectively. Now, the Russians do have artillery in the area, maybe a couple of companies possibly, but it's not much. And we're seeing that the Ukrainians aren't really getting blasted a lot by artillery or by anti-tank guided missiles. So these are a little overkill at the moment, but it's better to have overkill than no kill, if you know what I mean. And then we also got to see one more kind of a engineering vehicle. This may be a Brem. It's really hard for us to tell at the moment because the cope cage covering it is massive. Assuming that this thing would normally have a crane if it was a Brem, this may not be a Brem because the cope cage is covering where the crane would be, which would be on the right side of the vehicle over here closest to the camera. But we aren't really seeing a lot of that, at least at the moment. And so it's interesting to see, of course, that they have an engineering vehicle. We really don't know what kind this is. It looks like a T-72 based recovery vehicle or an engineering vehicle, but beyond that, we don't really know much about the specific make and model of the vehicle. But moving on from that and out of this area with this Leopard 1 based recovery vehicle, and a little bit further on down in south of the town of Malaya Luknaya, we also got to see another 30 Russian soldiers that were captured. It is insane the amount of footage that we're getting of Russian prisoners being captured, and according to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense reports, we only see about half of the amount of soldiers that are actually being captured. Apparently another half of them are unfilmed, but they are documented by the Ukrainian MOD, and we would largely believe the numbers of captured because they are going to be using those soldiers in future exchanges, so we will be able to confirm that that number is precise through those trades. But here's the clip of another 30 Russian soldiers captured.
17 человек. Давай. Привет. Еще раз, партия Ком, привет. Курская область.
And we see them putting the prisoners in a tree line for a short while.
Пацаны 30 типов взяли.
And that's the end of the clip, but still showing a pretty significant amount of Russian soldiers, about an entire platoon, again, being captured in the area. A fairly big ordeal, and once again showing that the Ukrainian forces are being met with a large amount of success, at least at the moment. Moving on from that and up towards the area of Shagarovo. You know something, folks? I just realized that there are two Shagarovos in Kursk. Much like there's two Lyubomovkas. There's a Lyubomovka up here, and then there's a Lyubomovka down here, right here as well. There are two Shagarovos. There's a Shagarovo right here north of Glushkovo, over here in the area around Tekhino, and then up here near the other Lyubomovka, there's another Shagarovo. The Russian post office is currently on a watch list because I think that the Russian postmen have gone insane trying to get which kinds of Shagarovos and which kind of Lyubomovkas is this mail supposed to be going to in literally the same oblast. Because here in America, There are some town names that repeat themselves, but you don't see it in like the same state. Like usually they're in different states way over into another state or something along those lines. You don't see like 900 Shagarovos. But anyways, moving on towards Shagarovo, which is very similar to Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, we did get to see even more POWs being taken. More of them. I mean, like, this is like the 4th clip that we've gotten today of prisoners being captured. It's an endless stream of them. And we have enough video and picture evidence to confirm the Ukrainians just keep taking them on. The Ukrainians have confirmed they've captured about 2,000 Russian soldiers. That is equivalent to nearly an entire brigade on the low end, because a brigade's made up of about 3,000 people. And so going off the number of 2,000, that means that at least 9 battalions have ended up surrendering in their entirety to the Ukrainian armed forces. So they're doing incredibly well, at least as far as the Russians, fighting the Russians goes. They're hardly having to fight most of them, because most of them are giving up before an actual effective fight can even be had. We also got to see, meanwhile, that Ukrainian forces are at least advancing with some rapidity in some areas, like around Lyubomovka, in this direction, because we did get to see a Ukrainian ambush or a Ukrainian assault onto a Russian tree line. We can see them advancing through the fields and laying down machine gun fire on the trees. And that's the end of that clip, but still, very interesting to see a mechanized assault happening within this direction. Meanwhile, we also got to see a little bit further north that a Russian MLRS has been destroyed in the area, apparently by counter battery fire. This is a 9P140 launcher, and really quickly, let me Google that and show y'all what a 9P41 launcher looks like, at least roughly. This is one with a new cab, and I'm going to try and find y'all a picture of this one with the newer cab. But to give y'all a better idea, I'm just going to show y'all what it is because I can't find the newer cab, at least really quickly. This is an Uragan, so it fires off, I believe, 230mm rockets. And let me make sure, it's 220mm rockets, actually, not 230. But they fire off 220mm rockets in somewhat larger numbers. This is one of the heavier multiple launch rocket systems that the Russians have. The smaller one that is more commonly seen is the BM-21 Grad, but the Ukrainians were able to counter battery and destroy a Russian Uragan launcher. And we were able to get that confirmed by a pro-Russian blogger account as well, that this Uragan was lost in this area. It is once again showing us that the Russian artillery is not really doing that effectively. Usually MLRS systems like that are some of the best, well, not really the best, but some of the quickest, at least historically, in the shoot and scoot kind of a role. Because instead of sitting there and having to wait about a few minutes to be able to fire off a few rounds, one of these MLRSs can unload all of their rockets in really under about half a minute at the longest, pack up and then leave about a minute or two later after that. It's very hard to triangulate these for counter battery, and on top of that, the rocket system is tacked onto the vehicle. So it's not like you have to detach the rocket launcher, spin it around, aim it, fire it, and then spin it back around, hook it back onto the truck and drive away. These things literally drive it to the position, you aim them, you fire them, and then you immediately stow the system and drive away. It's not that hard to keep MLRSs away from counter battery fire, and yet the Russians were so slow with this MLRS system that it ended up getting destroyed by Ukrainian counter battery, and one of their larger artillery systems in the theater at the moment has now been destroyed. They'll probably get more of these in the future, but for now we assume that their numbers are limited. Moving on from that and down into the area around Sudzha, we also got a large amount of updates from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, once again confirming things are going well. Yesterday, we were able to hear the shocking announcement that the Ukrainians had confirmed that they are controlling 1,000 square kilometers of Russian territory. That was according to Oleksandr Syrsky as of yesterday. As of the report that Oleksandr Syrsky gave today, Ukraine controls a whopping 74 settlements within the Kursk region of the Russian Federation. This is the video where he stated that. We don't have a translation for the video, but we do have the kind of like annotation above the video to confirm that that is what he said. But I will be playing this clip to let y'all at least hear Syrsky say it in Ukrainian, although we don't have a translation of it.
Бажаю здоров'я, пане президент України, Верховний Головнокомандуючий Збройних сил України.
Як справа?
Угруповання Збройних сил України продовжують ведення операції на території Курської області. За сьогоднішню добу наші війська просунулись на окремих напрямках від 1 до 3 кілометрів. Взято контроль над 40 квадратными километрами территории. И на сегодня 74 пункта находятся под нашим контролем. Бои ведутся по всей линии фронта. Ситуація, незважаючи на високу інтенсивність бойових дій, знаходиться під контролем, продовжує ведення операції.
По-перше, дякую нашим хлопцям, дівчатам, передайте від нас, від мене особисто привітання, дякую їм за службу таку героїчну. По-друге, дякую, що поповнюєте наш фонд обміну, це важливо, ми зможемо обміняти на наших хлопців, на наших військових. І я хотів вас також попросити не забувати і продовжувати тренування і розробку наступних важливих ключових кроків.
Всі заходи здійснюються відповідно до плану.
Добре. Дякую. Будемо на зв'язку.
That's seeing that clip right there, but while we didn't really have a translation for it or anything, he did confirm that they had captured 74 settlements within the Kursk region, which is a very large amount of settlements, and it kind of lines up largely with the front lines we have here. These front lines that we've laid out on this map are a rough approximate based off of information that we've gotten in the past of Ukrainian firefights occurring in certain areas, like, for example, around Kromsky-Byky, and also around the area of Lyubomovka as well. There are two separate Lyubomovkas inside the Kursk region. There's one down here and there's one up here, but from what we understand, the Lyubomovka up here may be the one that the Ukrainians are referencing, because we have seen some information that has proven to us that the Ukrainians have moved well beyond Sudzha and at least at Martinovka. Most other maps do not show that the Ukrainians control Martinovka at the moment. They show that they're right on the outskirts of Sudzha, and that's as far as they made it. And so with that in mind, we're now going to be moving on to our next bit of news in Sudzha, where we did get to see a Ukrainian vehicle driving through. And I want y'all, I'm not going to talk through this, I just want y'all to hear the audio, because there's a couple of major things to point out with the playing of this audio.
Центральна площа Суджі.
So now that y'all heard this clip, listen to how tranquil it was. That's probably one of the most important things that I can put out in this video. This was one of the most tranquil drives we've ever seen on film. Because usually you'll hear the distant sound of artillery, even usually miles away, or at least the sound of a firefight, or something along those lines, somewhere in one of these videos where a Ukrainian unit's driving around. But in this clip, y'all heard nothing. I will play it again to back that up. So let me turn up the audio, and we're going to play it again.
Центральна площа Суджі.
So y'all can hear that nothing is going on in this town, and the reason why I'm saying that is because, one, it does show that the Ukrainians have clear control of Sudzha, or whatever you would like to call it. The other thing that this shows, the second most important thing, is that there is no firefighting going on around Sudzha at this moment. From what we can tell, the Russians are nowhere nearby. And I want to make sure that that's very clear, because some people out there are saying, actually, the Ukrainians have not advanced beyond Sudzha. They've only made it to Sudzha and Makhnovka. And right now, the Russians are actually trying to push them out already. Some other YouTube channels are saying that. And from what I can tell, at least by video evidence, that would be markedly untrue, because with the Russian arrival of any kind of resistance, there will always be, as a rule, artillery support. We've known that for a while. The Russians do outnumber the Ukrainians in usable artillery pieces and the usable amount of shells, even at this point in the war, and so shelling would be heard and seen throughout Sudzha if there was any effective Russian resistance happening right outside of the town. We are not hearing that. We are not hearing the sound of firefights either, and we are also getting no reports of actual fighting happening around Sudzha, and for that reason, this channel is asserting that the front lines are far beyond Sudzha, further east, and they're not right outside of Sudzha and on Makhnovka. That would be impossible, because we're not even hearing the sounds of distant shelling in these areas, which would clearly let us know that there is a firefight going on. Another thing that I want to lay out about that, because some people are probably going to say, well, maybe there is active fighting in those areas, it's just that the Russians have no artillery support. I literally just showed a destroyed Uragan further up the way. It confirms that they do have artillery in the area. We also saw a load of Russian artillery around Rilisk as well, so we do know that the Russian artillery is all over the area at this point. And if there was any kind of active fighting at Sudzha, that artillery would be in the process of being used during that battle. It would be incredibly weird for them to be attacking the center point of this entire Ukrainian offensive in Kursk and then not use artillery to support their forces, suppress the Ukrainians, and try and push them out. So from what we understand, the battle is far beyond the outskirts of Sudzha, but we really don't know where. Moving on from that and down towards Plkovo, we did get to confirm that the Ukrainians had ended up taking Plkovo a while ago. We can now see them once again moving through and further south towards the Belovsky district, and in this clip we got to see something pretty funny. A drunk Russian actually just came out of his house and was like, "Hey, Slava Ukraini," or whatever, but he was drunk as hell, you could tell. So here's the clip.
Улица План. Слава Украине кричат, прикинь.
This guy laughs like someone from The Sopranos. He said, "Hey, Slava Ukrainian." I was like, yeah, all right.
Вот и первый местный житель.
And there he is. There's the drunk Russian.
В своем репертуаре, Рашка. Опять в торбулях.
Now, in that clip, I want y'all to hear this. Hear this in the last few seconds. Might be really hard for y'all to hear, but I'm not going to talk during the playing of the clip in a few seconds after, so y'all can turn up the audio and y'all can hear this. So here we go. See that right there? Like, you'll see what I'm talking about. If there was active resistance happening anywhere, you would hear the faint sound of a firefight or at least artillery shelling. At the very end of that clip, you could hear a tiny bit of gunfire, which is showing that there is some kind of Russian resistance happening nearby outside of Plkovo to the east. So that is confirming that this is probably the farthest that the Ukrainians have been able to make it in this area, and there is some kind of Russian resistance towards Borky, because there was an active firefight going on in that clip. Meanwhile, we also got to see a damaged striker in this area as well. Apparently, this will be transported out of the area. It was hit on the underside of the hull by an RPG of some sort. Luckily, by great fortune, this did not hit on the left side of the striker, because the engine in the striker is right at the front of the vehicle, right over here where the RPG hit. So the engine largely absorbed the blast of the RPG. Apparently, the driver got some sort of a concussion. It could have been a lot worse, though. If that RPG had hit on the left side of the vehicle, it most likely would have punched through the armor, killing the driver and maybe wounding some of the infantry in the back that was being carried by the striker. But fortunately, it hit in the engine bay. A tire got blown out on the back of the vehicle, and also the front right tire also got deflated as well. We don't really know the cause of that, but apparently the striker did fairly well, and they'll be now transporting it out of Kursk back into Ukraine, where they'll repair it and try and put it back into frontline service, and then they'll be sending it back towards the front. But still very interesting to see, and very good to know that the striker is doing a fairly good job at protecting its crew, although it's not wildly armored like a main battle tank or anything like that. But moving on from that and down towards Giri, we were also able to confirm that Ukrainian forces are in this town as well. We were able to get footage of some sort of Ukrainian APC going through, and I want to make sure that this is a little clear. We don't know what kind of APC this is, because I heard loads of different people saying different things. I claimed it was a BTR-4E, and some others claimed that it was a Rosamac, and some claimed that it was a Striker. But here's the clip.
Сюда иди, да, Миш?
We hear it coming on down the road. And we see it right there. Another thing that we've heard, I want to put this out really quickly, is that this is a captured vehicle that the Russians captured from the Ukrainians. From what I can tell, that would be untrue. We don't see a Russian flag flying off the vehicle, which would be something that has to be done if you're capturing one of these vehicles. It is marked up with Ukrainian offensive symbols, meaning that if another Russian unit sees this, they're going to fire on it and destroy it, even if Russians are operating it and did capture it. We are seeing no proof or symbols of any Russian capture on this vehicle, and so this does appear to be a fully operational and active Ukrainian APC that was moving through Giri. It looks to be a BTR-4 to me, still. Like, I still think I'm going to have to stick to my guns on that one.
Кресты, все как надо. Хуярит как надо. Крупнокалиберный пулемет.
It actually, I don't know. That might actually be a Rosmac. Let's take a look at a Rosmac really quickly. Rosmac. And let's see if we can get a match here. Okay. So, if you notice, this is what we're looking at, most importantly. The wheelbase on this thing. It has some sort of a wheel thing right here, which separates the front two wheels from the rear two wheels. And if we look at a Rosmac, the Rosmac does not appear to have that, at least on the left side. And we're assuming that the right side will be very similar. And it looks, actually, that looks like it may be a Rosmac. So let's try and take a look at the front of the vehicle, and then figure it out from there. Although we don't really get to see the front of it well. But you see, the thing with this is that from the front of it, it looks clearly like it has two windshields, which makes it look like it was a BTR-4. And let me go pull up a BTR-4E, so that way we can, once again, try and identify this thing a little bit better. And so let me see here, let me see. Okay, this is probably a pretty okay picture to show of this thing. So this is a BTR-4, this is a Rosmac. So with both of them having a turret on top of them, it's actually really hard to tell them apart. But there is some sort of a larger divider in the middle of the BTR's hull that separates the front two wheel sets from the rear two wheel sets. And so we can see right here, it has a turret. It looks like it has two windshields. It clearly has two windshields, and that's something that the BTR-4 has, but the Rosmac certainly does not have. So then once it moves further on by, once again, like I was saying earlier, you can see that little divider right there in between the wheels. You can also see one in between the rear two wheels, but you don't really see one at the front. So from what I can tell, I think this is still a BTR-4. It's certainly not a Striker. I don't believe the United States ever provided a Striker of any form or variant that has the chain gun turret on top of it. So the Striker is largely ruled out from the beginning. It's either a Rosmac or a BTR-4, and it largely looks to me, from photo identification, to be some sort of a BTR-4E. But still, pretty nice to see. Good to know that they were able to get one moving through the area, and good to know that they were able to capture the town of Giri. But moving on from that, we were also able to hear that an evacuation of Belaya is being announced. And this is a fairly interesting one, because according to the Russians, they are able to stop the Ukrainians dead in their tracks and absolutely nothing's going on in the area. But according to the regional governance of Belaya, the operational headquarters of the Kursk region decided to evacuate residents from the Vovchansk district, the acting governor said. The Ministry of Transport of the Kursk region is organizing additional buses to transport residents of the border Vovchansk district. And so it does seem as though the Russians are starting to evacuate this district. We are assuming that is the case because the Russian Federation is not winning, and the Ukrainians are starting to advance into the area of the Vovchansk district. And so they're going to start evacuating people, so that way they aren't really having to worry that much about civilian casualties, which would be very bad optics for the Russian government, especially if they're killing their own civilians, not Ukrainian civilians. And so moving on from that and back towards the area of Sudzha, we were also able to get another interesting little bit of news. The Sudzha gas terminal clearly has been damaged. We said that the Ukrainians would probably cut off the pipeline in the future to try and heavily damage the Russians economically. We are assuming that it's already been cut off at this point, because looking at the pipeline, there's a very clear artillery hit to most of the pipes, at least on the northern end of the compound, which probably shut off the entire pumping station a while ago. A very good thing to know, because now they can't really use. And it looks like we're back. Oh, buddy. Are we back, Matthew?
Yes, we are back.
Hey, we are back! And Matthew sounds like death. But still, beyond that...
I'm going to go ahead and apologize right now to the entire audience. I feel like crap over here right now. I think I'm coming down with something. I won't go into details, it's not necessary, but it's not going good over here right now in the Colton, Matt. It's going rough. But anyways, Enforcer, go right ahead.
But nevertheless, before we move on from the area of Kursk and all of the major news that we've been able to get out of this area, we are going to take a quick pause for a moment because we have some incredibly interesting questions from all of y'all. And to move right into those, while I move on over into the spreadsheet, starting off, and also really quickly, I just want to lay this out there for all of y'all. Because Matthew's not feeling well tonight, I'm doing everything that requires talking, so I'm also going to be the one reading off everything out of the spreadsheet when we get it. So Matthew's not really having that much of a talking role. He is here, but he is not feeling well, and I got to give him a huge credit for soldiering on and being here at all, because he's a massive help in being able to keep everything behind the scenes running. But you know, got to give him a huge credit, but he won't be talking a lot, so it'll really just be me tonight. So everyone, you know, I put an LC in the chat for Enforcer Matt. Hopefully he gets well. I don't really know what's up with him yet. He sounded kind of rough before the stream a little bit, and now he's sounding a lot worse, so I don't know if it's that food.
Bug. It's definitely a bug. It's not the food this time. It's definitely a bug. I've got some chills going on and some other stuff. So sadly, I think I'm coming down with something. It's finally happened. I haven't been sick in a long time, like actually legitimately sick. But you know, last time it was Chipotle, it almost took me out. But now it's an actual bug. So I hate that. But hopefully, it's not a long-lasting bug. A long-lasting bug.
We want real bug, long-lasting bug. I do not. I do not, okay? Like, I was like, nah, I think I'm good. But anyways, moving on into some questions. We have a $100 super chat from LSA Rocks. And LSA Rocks said, getting some of my news, keep on going, smiley face. Take one from the chat, and also smash that like button, please. And a huge thanks to you, LSA Rocks, for enjoying this channel and throwing in some massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. We have loads of viewers here again tonight. We actually will have had at the peak about 14.5 thousand viewers on tonight. That is an insanely high number. Crazily enough, it's not one of the highest streams that we've had over the past few days, but this is still wildly high. And I want to take a huge thanks for everyone for a moment for being here with us pretty much every single day that we've been covering the news live for about the past week. It means a lot to us, and we absolutely love and adore having everyone here, choosing this channel to be the primary source of news you'll get, at least in live stream form, every single day. And also, I want to give a quick explanation for some new viewers on how this channel works. Some people are realizing that I just read off a super chat, and we said that we're going to be moving into some questions. This gives some people the idea that you have to pay to have a question answered here on this channel. That is not the case. This channel it tries to run as free as it possibly can for the viewers. Y'all don't have to dedicate a single second of time to listening to a sponsor or a advertisement on the stream. We've completely ruled both of those out. There are no ads on any of our streams, and there are no sponsorships as well. The only way that we are able to do this as a living, because we do have to make money and do this as a living, you know, that's kind of like a necessity of doing this as our full-time job, about 60 hours a week each. We have to end up making a living somehow. And the way we do that is with super chats. And so people throw in super chats on the live streams, and when they when we're running the stream, we take a moment and we prioritize the super chats and we address those first. Because if it was not for those super chatters, we wouldn't be able to make the stream possible any given day of the week, because we wouldn't be able to financially support ourselves to be able to do this as our job. And so that's how the question segment works. If you're throwing in a live chat question, do not fret. They eventually, hopefully, will be answered. We try and get to as many of them as we can. And a lot of super chatters, like LSA Rocks, and he just did it, sponsor live chat questions. So we address their super chat, and then we were able to go grab a live chat as a part of that super chat. So we get to grab a question out of the live chat absolutely free. No one had to pay a dime to have that question answered. I wanted to make sure to explain that, because there's usually all kinds of misconceptions that people try and get from how the channel works, or people try and deliberately put out about how this channel works, which are very disingenuous and really, you know, just straight up lies and misinformation. But then we have to deal with the aftermath of that and then try and explain how the channel works. Unlike other channels, we don't end up getting all of our money in secret in the background. It's all public. It's in super chats. You'll see them come in, and then we address every single person who supports the channel live on air and give them a big thanks for it. But nevertheless, A huge thank you so much, LSA Rocks. And everyone make sure to hit that like button. We've gotten up to 3,200 likes so far, which is absolutely incredible. We don't really see that often, actually. And I gotta say, I love to know that people are enjoying the stream. I hope that y'all keep on hitting that like button because it really does make it nice. It makes it nice to run the channel. We'd love to know that people enjoy the streams. And it also helps us to reach out to even more people and let them know about this channel. But still, thank you so much once again for keeping on, and we will make sure to take one from the chat in your honor. And this live chat question is going to go to Andy L., who's also a channel legend. And Andy L. asks, heard Ukraine has captured 2,000 plus Russians. Is this true or false? From what we can understand, this is entirely true, as the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense has published this number, and according to the video evidence that we've been able to get on the ground, including today, or really over the past 48 hours, it does seem as though the Ukrainians are taking on a massive amount of prisoners from the Russian side. So going off of that, we are assuming that the 2,000 number is true. It is one of the largest, I guess you could say, situations or moments of surrender in the entire war. The largest mass surrender we've ever seen up to this point was the surrender of the Azov unit at the Azovstal, which was, I think at that point, about 400 or 500 men strong inside of that metallurgical plant. It wasn't really that big of a unit anymore, but that was the largest single surrender we had seen. Including all of the surrenders in Kursk, this now by far is the largest moment of surrender from either side in the war. Now the Russians hold that title, and they're number one in something, at least. The largest number of forces to surrender in the shortest amount of time. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Huge shout out to LSA Rocks once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are now moving on to our next question, which is a $100 super chat from Hokey Redneck. And hey, thank you so much for the massive support. And also, Hokey Redneck said, does Ukraine have enough supply to take Voronezh? I would initially say no. Voronezh is probably too big of an offensive objective, at least at the moment. Voronezh is very far away from Kursk, speaking in a military kind of a situation. It is about 110 miles away on a major roadway from Kursk to Voronezh, and this would also require a massive dedication of armed forces and supply forces by Ukraine that they may not really have in the big picture. I mean, they certainly have enough to conduct major incursions into Kursk and possibly take the city of Kursk, but trying to take Voronezh, they probably would have to capture Belgorod as well to even get to the point where they could consider an offensive like that. And not only that, it's 110 miles away. So even moving 10 miles a day, it would take them about 2 full weeks of moving as fast as their army could to be able to make it to Voronezh, much less with actual Russian resistance, which at that point we would assume that the Russians are pretty much prioritizing the defense of Russia over an offensive war in Ukraine. And so going off of that, I would have to say that I don't really think an offensive into Voronezh will be possible in the foreseeable future. Maybe way off in the future, maybe if the war goes on for another year and a half, maybe that would be possible at that point. But right now, I'm largely doubting that this kind of an offensive could end up being successful all the way from Kursk to Voronezh. That, I think, would be a little bit beyond Ukraine's abilities. But I still thank you massively for the support, Hokey Redneck, and throwing in a really good question, actually, because a lot of people have been wondering, how far can the Ukrainians go? I honestly think that maybe Kursk is the limit right now. If they dedicate a lot more forces and a lot more sustainment and support forces, they could certainly move further on. They could start moving towards Voronezh and Oriel. But right now, I'm kind of doubting that any major offensive heading deeper into Russia beyond Kursk could really cause, really be effective or really cause any kind of significant damage or result in any kind of a significant victory. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Huge thanks to Hokey Redneck once again for the support. And with that, we're moving on into our last question of this segment, which is from Leora Avagile. Hey! And huge shout out to Leora Avagile. You've been around for a while. And I got to thank you so much for that massive support while I click my teeth together right there. Y'all might have been able to hear that on air. And helping this channel to keep on running. That is incredibly kind of y'all. I got to give a huge shout out to all three of y'all. Y'all are throwing in massive support and helping this channel be possible, and we owe y'all a great debt of gratitude and a huge thanks for that. But Leora Avagile said, "Good evening, enforcers," and oh, hello there on behalf of Matthew and me. Hello there. And also Leora said, Do you think Iran is going to FAFO? And I think Iran forgets about how back in the 80s, during the time of another president of the United States, Iran got blown out of the water within 8 hours. A proportional response for attacking the U.S., I think, another proportional response. And I would have to say, Leora, that's actually a pretty good question. That actually moves us on to a news segment that is kind of a bit of an annotated footnote tonight, but it's still a pretty big one that's going on right now. The situation with Iran is an interesting one. I think the Iranians are effing around and maybe finding out here in the future, but it's not really the way I would think. I also see someone saying that we were having more lag, and it doesn't really look like I am on my end. Maybe it's a YouTube thing. But to try and answer that question a little bit more about Iran, I don't really think they're effing around and finding out that much. I mean, they're certainly effing around, but they're not really finding out, because the United States' responses to Iran have been fairly lax at the moment. We haven't really seen a lot done to them. Another U.S. base was attacked tonight. And we're still not seeing the United States really behind any kind of a large response. As a matter of fact, from what we've heard today, I didn't include this in our news summary tonight because it's kind of a bit of a, well, some people would construe it as a political thing, although it really is just the news. The President of the United States actually called up Hamas and pretty much begged them to get back into peace negotiations with Israel. I don't really know if the U.S. government is realizing this at this point as a whole, but no one in the region wants peace. The Israelis are not behind peace. The Iranians and their proxies are not behind peace. This region is clearly going to war. So the United States needs to stop working in this perspective that peace is achievable. Peace is no longer achievable in this area. Diplomacy has fallen apart, and we are now on the path to war in this area. Continuously working off of a concept that peace can be achievable even with the situation at hand is quite ridiculous. I would say that it's actually a dream, a fever dream of a sort. It's not going to happen right now. We need to make sure to support our allies in the region. That doesn't just include Israel. That also includes Jordan, the SDF in Syria, Saudi Arabia, and other countries as well in their stand against Iran. Iran is going to be attacking. Their proxies are going to be attacking as well. And it's quite clear to me that the United States isn't going to be able to stop that, and they're not going to be able to stop the Israeli response either. So for that reason, we need to start lining ourselves up with Israel for a full-on defense and also an offensive action against Iran, because that may be the only way that they back off for a while and cease these kinds of hostile activities. The Iranians are making it quite clear at this point. They're not ceasing their activities anytime soon. They had made that very clear back in the past as well, that they weren't ceasing their hostile activities back in the late 80s. But their tone quickly changed when Operation Praying Mantis came around, and they ended up obliterating half of the Iranian Navy in about half an hour. That changed their tune really quickly, and they actually backed off a lot of what they were doing, at least publicly, and didn't do anything directly against the United States or our allies in the area for at least a couple of years. And so, in my opinion, I would have to say 100%, the United States needs to take a more offensive stance in this area. We've been advocating that for a while. Some people would say that that's a warmongering stance, but to those people who say that that's warmongering, I say they're cowards, because at some point, you've got to eventually realize you can't appease the other side to the point you end up offing yourself. Because that's what they want, and that's the way to get peace. You don't go, well, the Iranians hate Americans and they want us dead, and so because we love peace so much, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to, hang myself from a tree or something, so that way they're happy. That's not how we should be working this thing, and that's almost how we're working in the Middle East right now. We're like, okay, they hate America and they want us dead, and they hate all of our allies in the area and they want them dead as well. What if we just try to tell them kumbaya and get along? That's not going to happen. That's just obviously not going to happen. So we have to end up taking the other option, which is a lot more aggressive. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. I don't know if they're really going to be finding out right now. And also on top of that, if the United States is going to conduct any real action in the area, it's going to be entirely defensive, because we have not really seen the United States conduct any offensive actions, even in the defense of itself. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least given the current situation that we see. I hope that does kind of answer that well. It's not really a great answer, but it's not really a great answer. Not that I sucked at giving it. It's just not a great answer as in what we're doing, but it is what it is. That's the reality of the situation. I'll be entirely honest with y'all. Also, I got to make this fair, because now I'm seeing some people saying, oh, it's getting a little political. I'm going to be honest with y'all, both sides are doing this right now. I'll say this as fairly as I can because this falls within our no politics rules about how we can equally critique or praise both sides. Both sides are largely into the concept of appeasement in the Middle East. I know a lot of people are going to be shocked to hear that, but there was a statement made by what you could call the opposition to the current sitting government right now, and they said that they would make a peace that even Iran was happy with. And no fighting would ever have to happen. They would get what they want, we would get what we want, and the world would be great. And that's not going to be the case. Like, if the Iranians want us dead, and they want Israel destroyed, if there is ever an agreement where Israel is not destroyed and the Americans are still in a good standing in the region, that means the hostilities would continue beyond that negotiation. That means that whatever we would have to do in that negotiation that would actually make the Iranians happy would be giving something to them that we do not want to give up, and that's appeasement in another form. That is a different vein of appeasement than what we're seeing right now. And that's why I'm saying that neither of those paths are a good path. That, once again, staying within our no politics rules, I would carve out our own path. It's quite clear Iran is an enemy of the United States. Negotiating with them at this point is no longer an option, especially given the situation that we're seeing in the region. A very strong armed response by the United States is necessary at this point to secure stability within this region and to also ensure that the Iranians back off. They either have the option at that point to escalate it further into a full-blown regional conflict against the United States and our allies in the region, or they can back off and hope that we don't do anything against them further. That would be my option in the region, because that seems to be the last option we have, and when we're posed with one last option like this one, we have to take it, because beyond that, we're just appeasing them until we eventually screw ourselves over. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, Leora Avagile. Thank you so much once again for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're now moving on out of this question segment, and we're now moving on back into Ukraine. We're going to be getting into the Middle East here in a minute, by the way, everyone, because Leora threw in a good question, and we actually have a little bit of news coming out of that area over the past 48 hours, so we are going to be getting down here and covering it. But moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we were able to see a destroyed Russian Brem. We don't know where this was, but that thing was cooking. But very nice to see. Good to see him cooking. And we love to know that the Brems are out there brimming with heat. Moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian casualty report as well, which was incredibly good. Oh! 5 Bobcat skid steers destroyed. What a night. If only Enforcer Matt was here with us now. But I'm just kidding.
I'm telling you what, I love to see those Bobcats, man. Those Bobcats are coming in strong. I'm telling you what, 5 Bobcats. Let's go.
Man, Enforcer Matt coming in. Man, I got the suds, but it's good to see. It's like, dang, man, you sound rough. I'm not lying. I gotta say, man, thank you for sticking it through tonight, because you actually do sound like you're getting rough off over there. I'm hoping I don't get it.
I think this might be a multi-day thing, but I'm gonna try to hang in here every night. So if I'm over here silent for a few nights, that's fine. But I'll try to hang in there.
Man, the Cult of Matt, they got your back. I mean, like, put an LSA in the chat if you got Matt's back. I've said that like twice tonight, but I'm sure Matthew loves to see it. And so with that, 1,160 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 17 armored personnel carriers, 59 supply trucks, 5 main battle tanks, 36 artillery pieces, 19 drones, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and the 5 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, today has been a really good day once again, and the Ukrainians really are giving it to the Russians in a lot of their defensive efforts throughout the region. Moving on from that and into the area around Lipsy, we did get to see a Russian attempt at an attack on Lipsy fail. And so here's the clip. We can hear the dubstep remix music hitting hard, and boy does it hit hard, as the Russians attempt their advance down the road towards Lipsy. A lot of sheds were actually involved in this offensive. And we now see the sheds getting hit. As some of y'all may be wondering why Enforcer Matt is sick. Some say that he's sick because he has the flu. Others say that he's got a cold. Really, the reality is that Matthew is sick of the bullshit. But beyond that, we can see the... Beyond that, we can see the Russians continuing to advance in the area. We can see their sheds pulling up into the tree line, and they're getting slammed by Ukrainian artillery. And I mean, they're getting hit. It's pretty rough.
Man, when I got ill, I wasn't sure if I was going to go grab the Pepto or the BS repellent. I wasn't sure.
Man, but at least
I grabbed the Pepto to play it safe.
but at least, Matthew, we know that everyone wishes us well. I'm very happy to know that. But we can see the Russians now running from the tree line, trying to make their way the hell out of there. Getting hit in the butt, actually, well, the butt of the tank, right in the engine bay, and the engine caught on fire. The shed had to be abandoned, and it now has burned down in the middle of the street. We can now see the other sheds in raw chaos as they try and leave the area, but the clip ends right there. Still, that is clearly a failed attack on Lipsy, and it is showing that the Russians are not having that much progress. Moving on from that and down near Pledanivka, we also got to see a destroyed Ural as well. This was removed because the Ural was too much, and so we cannot show it. Moving on from that and down in the area of Chernopopivka, we did get to see the Ukrainians hitting the Russians with some mines. Apparently that's a little too spicy, and so we won't be able to show that. However, down near Kurtamivka, we did get to see a T-90M breakthrough being destroyed by the Phoenix. And we can see the Russians now advancing through the fields around Kurtamivka. Oh, dang. First vehicle got blasted. I'm not sure if that's the T... Oh, the second vehicle got blasted. One of them is a T-90M. I'm not really sure which... Well, I'm not really sure now. Maybe both of those were APCs? We now see a shed advancing through the area. And we see the Russians getting blasted. And we see them now showing in daytime footage. The turret of a main battle tank. That may actually be the T-90M's turret. It's hard to tell because it's such a smoldering mess. Oh, I mean, no. Here's the T-90M. My lord, they built like an entire 4-story building on top of this thing, and it still didn't save it from getting blown up. And there it goes right there. An immediate ammo cook-off. The T-90M is now completely destroyed. Damn. What a day. And when you see that thing cooking and roasting and toasting, and it is nice to see that they were able to knock out that T-90M. Moving on from that and down near New York, we also got to see the Ukrainians were bombing New York. Pro-Russians have been crawling over this statement today. Just saying, look, they're anti-American, they're bombing New York. I'm just kidding. But anyways, here's a clip. And when you see part of the building collapsing after the Ukrainian bomb exploding near the base, it looks like the Israelis are giving the Ukrainians some tips. And we see a part of the building has collapsed. And that's the end of the clip. But nice to see the Call of Duty Ghosts mask right there. Really cool. Nice little emblem. It hit the world like crack hit the inner cities back a few years ago when Call of Duty Ghosts came out. And it's never left since. But moving on from that and down into the area of Novobikalivka, we also got to see a failed Russian assault down E. When you see the Russians trying to make their way around. It's a rough time out here in these streets. And we now see the tanks getting hit. We see an FPV drone watching that tank. And we can see another one, and we can see them toasting down there. Oh! Getting them. And that's the end of that clip. But hey, they got him pretty good. And another Russian assault near Novomikhailivka was stopped again, dead in its tracks. Moving on from that and down near Kherson, we also got to see a Russian building getting hit with a TM-62 anti-tank mine. Oh, wait, hang on. Correction. There's the building. It gets hit. Anti-tank mine blows up on top. Russians... I don't really see a lot of them down there, actually. I think they all might have gone sleeping in the building. And we see the drone once again observing for any signs of the Russians waking up. And I think they went to sleep and they're staying to sleep. Well, that's the end of that clip, but nice to see that they were able to slam that thing down and get them good. Moving on from that and down near the Kinburn Spit, we also got to see the Ukrainian flag flying over the very edge of the Kinburn Spit. Here it is. Some say that the Ukrainians don't even spit in the direction of Kinburn, but I have information to prove to the contrary, as we can see this Ukrainian flag down here flying on the peninsula. I guess you could say that the Ukrainians and spit on that thing, if you know what I mean. But we can see the flag flying right there. Very nice to see. And meanwhile, we also got to see that they are causing hell for the Russians down near Vasilivka, a village on the Spit, as they started to attack them with FPV drones. This is apparently done by the Foreign Legion of Ukraine. Oh. We're going to be muting that, but... And we now see the FPV drones hitting the Russian positions all along the Spit. Some have asked the Ukrainians what the fighting conditions are like in the Kinburn Spit, and one Ukrainian Special Forces officer said, "Spitty." More at 11. But we can see here that the Ukrainians are operating the FPV drones out of some buildings nearby. And also, Hokey Redneck says, how does the enforcer know the Spit Girl? She was on every meme for like a month. I don't even know how it's that funny, really, to be honest with y'all. Like, I try and make it funny, but the original joke was like, it wasn't that funny to me. But, you know, hey, I mean, it caught on. People apparently found it to be hilarious. So, you know, it is what it is. So I started using it a little bit. But we can see here the FPV drones just slamming into everything. And we can see they are grilling up everything. And we can see another drone coming in, hitting another building here. And that's the end of the clip, but very nice to see the ongoing offensive within the Kinburn Spit. But moving on from that and out of Ukraine for a moment, it's time for us to move on down into the Middle East, because it is time for us to cover a little bit of information. Once again, we are starting to hear that the attack could be coming any minute now. Fox News put out a statement about 48 hours ago that the attack would be coming within 24 hours. 24 hours after the lapse of that deadline, no attack has come. So we are still waiting for it. I'm not going to put out a timetable for when it's going to happen, because no one has any clue, and everyone who's guessing right now is making themselves look worse. But in the Upper Galilee area, we did get to see an unusually large barrage by Hezbollah, and a decent amount of the rockets actually made it through and impacted northern Israel. You can see a lot of the impacts in these pictures right here, showing that Hezbollah may be overwhelming the Iron Dome system with the size of this attack, and therefore Israel wasn't able to defend against it all too well. Meanwhile, in Baghdad, we also, well, I put the statement in Baghdad, it's really for the entirety of the Middle East, 40,000 U.S. troops are now stationed within the area of the Middle East and the Gulf. And so the number is getting fairly high within this area, and it appears that the United States is trying to bolster the ground forces as much as they can so that way they can get ready for the incoming attack by Iran, not only with air forces, but also with ground air defense forces as well. So we are going to be waiting to see if that actually unfolds when that attack happens and how the coalition will respond to this attack inside the Middle East. But moving on from that, we also have a quick mention of the Chinese, because many of y'all may know that the Chinese are one of the biggest economic and military powers in the world. They are second only to the United States. And according to them, they had a statement to say about the Kursk offensive by Ukraine. They said, "Whoa! Hey! We call on all parties to adhere to the principles of de-escalation, no expansion of the battlefield, no escalation of hostilities, and no incitement by any side." They literally said the same thing about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I think the Chinese just say things about this war to feel good. I really do, because this is one of the most useless statements I've ever seen, and it's going to end up creating absolutely nothing. This is not going to be stopping the Ukrainian offensive into Kursk, and it did not stop the Russian invasion into Ukraine. So these statements are largely pointless and kind of silly, but the Chinese had to make it. They're obligated to make it because they are the good neighbor citizen of the world. And so moving on from that and into Kyiv, it is now time for us to listen to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 902 of the war. And hopefully this is a little bit of a lengthy one, and it is, because I need to get some water. And so without further ado, I wish you well, fellow Ukrainians. Here is the speech. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці і українки. Сьогодні було вже кілька доповідей головкома Сирського щодо ситуації на фронті. Також на територіях проведення нашої операції в Курській області. Збільшуємо територію активних дій. Головком доповідав, що наші сили контролюють 74 населених пункти в Курській області. Дякую кожному солдату, кожному командиру, які це забезпечують. Знов дякую і усім нашим хлопцям, які поповнюють обмінний фонд. Це дуже важливо для нашої держави. Вже сотні російських військових здались в полон, і всі вони отримують гуманне ставлення. Такого ставлення вони навіть у їхній же російській армії не мали. Окремо проговорив з міністром оборони Умєровим, представниками Верховної Ради, Офісом, щоб для наших воїнів, для всіх захисників, захисниць, які виконують бойові завдання на території держави-агресора, були гарантовано і швидко забезпечені всі виплати, премії та інші речі, які передбачені для фронту і без жодної бюрократії для наших воїнів. Це загальна і обов'язкова політика нашої держави. Наші захисники мають бути убезпечені від будь-якого бюрократичного тиску. Обговорили також сьогодні на спеціальній нараді нові рішення та законодавчі ініціативи, які ми готуємо на серпень і які точно посилять нашу державу, наш захист, наше суспільство. І сьогодні ж вже відбулася зустріч робочої групи щодо пункту нашої формули миру щодо енергетичної безпеки. Взяли участь у зустрічі представники 40 країн-партнерів і міжнародних організацій. Ми готуємо роботу, і це буде онлайн робота вже в серпні на рівні радників, яка готуватиме конкретний шлях гарантування енергетичної безпеки. Вдячний усім, хто допомагає. І зараз всім нам в Україні потрібно діяти так само об'єднано та ефективно, як це було і в перші тижні і місяці цієї війни, коли Україна перехопила ініціативу та почала повертати ситуацію в інтересах нашої держави. Зараз ми зробили так само. Ми знов довели, що в будь-якій ситуації ми, українці, здатні досягати своїх завдань, здатні захищати свої інтереси та свою незалежність. І ми маємо на 100% використати наші досягнення. Так і буде. Зберігаємо увагу до кожного напрямку захисту нашої держави, до всіх фронтових напрямків. Донеччина, Покровський, Торецький, Краматорський, Харківщина, Південь. Окрема увага Курській області, а отже, захисту всіх наших прикордонних громад поруч. Чим більше російської військової присутності буде знищено в прикордонні, тим ближче буде мир для нашої держави і справжня безпека. Російська держава повинна відповідати за те, що вона наробила, і вона відповідає. Я пишаюся нашими людьми. Слава Україні!
And Herom Slava, that came at like an unexpected time. That was such a quick Herom Slava that I did not even see it coming. Like, my goodness, I was over here eating my salted Pringles, and I was just trying to get some energy to keep on trucking with this stream. But on that note, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and that wraps up our news segment here on day 902 of the war. And that's moving us on into the next segment, which is our question segment. It is an incredibly fun segment. We get to talk to every single one of y'all. We get to talk to all of the super chatters, and we get to talk to as many folks who threw in live chat questions as we possibly can. But before we move on into this segment, I do want to give a massive amount of appreciation and thanks to all of y'all once again for being here with us tonight so far. We still have a lot to go, so make sure to stick around. It's going to be incredibly fun. But we had 14.5 thousand people here at the peak, and so far, at this point in the stream, about 80,000 people have watched. That is absolutely incredible. We very rarely see numbers like these on this channel, and I gotta say that we are entirely honored and humbled to have all of y'all here with us, listening to this news and counting on this channel as y'all's primary source of news. We covered this news in streaming form, just like this, 6 days a week. Every single day, y'all can count on us to be here in covering this news. And almost every day, literally 7 days a week, if there is enough news, y'all can count on us making short war videos like the one we made today, which was incredibly well received. It's gotten about roughly 200,000 views, I think, at this moment. And, it almost has. Would you look at that? That's pretty cool. So that's pretty neat to see, and we, of course, thank everyone so much for subscribing. We passed 260,000 subscribers yesterday. We're already almost up to 262,000 subscribers today. It's been absolutely insane, the speed and rate at which this channel has been growing, and I've just got to say a huge thanks to everyone who's been with us for so long, everyone who's just joining us right now, and everyone who will stick with us. Because we try our best to cover this news, and I'm glad that a lot of people appreciate the amount of time and effort that we put into this on a day-to-day basis. But with that, we're now moving on into that question segment. Because there are a lot of questions, not a lot of polls. We love the Polish people. We love the Poles. We really do. But sadly, not a lot of polls because Matthew came down with the Spanish flu about 2 hours ago. And so sadly, we will not have a lot of polls for that reason. But still, with that, it is time for us to move on into those questions. And we actually have two channel legends to start off with. A huge shout out to Andy L and BC Skyman. Andy L threw in a $60 super chat, and BC Skyman threw in a $57 super chat. A huge shout out to both of y'all, because if it wasn't for both of y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. Y'all didn't leave comments, and I know that y'all enjoy the channel greatly. I'm sure y'all have many kind things to say, because we've heard it time and time again from the both of y'all, those incredibly kind words. And I gotta thank y'all once again for really enjoying this channel and finding it worthwhile to support, because y'all support, much like everyone else's, helps to make this channel possible each and every single day. We run a stream like really no other out there on YouTube. A lot of people have a buy me a coffee. A lot of people have a GoFundMe, something like that. A lot of people do stuff like that. A lot of people have sponsorships. A lot of people turn on the ads on their streams. We have none of that. Y'all are the only thing, the only lifeline that makes this channel possible and makes it a reality for us to be able to run this news on a day in and day out basis. And I gotta say a huge thanks and appreciation to everyone who supports the channel. Y'all been able to allow this channel to exist in a very special way where we really don't over monetize the channel. And a lot of people go, oh yeah, you don't over monetize the channel, but you read super chats. And here's the thing to me, we don't over monetize it in the amount of income we make, because I'll kind of guide y'all through the figures of income that's made by, let's just say some random YouTuber out there who does this, who has all these different monetization paths. So we make super chats. Every single streamer that covers this makes super chats. Every single one of them does. Every single one of them has the function turned on. So everyone makes that money. Everyone makes money off of super chats. But then they make additional money off of AdSense, which, you don't see that number come in. But that's about, like, with this kind of viewership that we'll get on this stream, which is like 140,000 views, that's about an additional 300 to 400 US dollars that they're making that you just don't see or hear about. It's something that they quietly make in the background. Then they have Buy Me a Coffee, and they maybe make about an additional $70 to $100 a day on Buy Me a Coffee. So each day, at that point, if you're making $300 in Super Chats, you have ads turned on a stream like this, and you have Buy Me a Coffee, you're making about $800 a day. Not that bad. But then you also have to factor in that they have a Patreon as well. They also have sponsorships that are worth thousands of dollars. So at the end of the day, you could have a pretty big payout if you monetize the channel every single way you could. And also with channel memberships, oh my goodness, y'all don't even know about channel memberships. Memberships are one of the ways that people make the most money on YouTube, because there's something that's a reoccurring subscription fee, which people don't have to think about a lot, and they just keep having them. So you're guaranteed a payout every single month. And that could make you an additional several $1,000s a month. We have none of that on. We don't have sponsors on the streams. We don't run ads on the streams. We don't have a membership system built into our YouTube channel. We don't have any of that. We don't have a Buy Me a Coffee. We have a Patreon, but we only plug that on the videos because the videos are an entirely different thing, and we do the budgeting for those entirely different. Speaking of which, the budgeting actually is going to start mattering a lot more in the future. I'm not going to talk about that a lot yet, but it probably will start to matter a lot more. Y'all will see eventually. But still, beyond that, we do none of that. We don't collect thousands of dollars, sometimes a day, silently in the background where y'all don't see it. Everything that we make is up front, right in front of y'all. Y'all see it in the live chat. Y'all see the super chats. And so we try and make it as transparent as we possibly can. Have we been attacked for that? Yeah, I don't know if we're being attacked for that because it's super transparent and people don't like the transparency, or whether people are just ignorant and they don't understand how YouTube monetization works. Like, just because you don't see someone making money in front of your face means that they're not making it. Like, I don't know if people think that way, because that is certainly not the case. But like, everyone on YouTube makes money doing this. If someone makes it sound like they're not, they're lying to you. And so I hope that does address that fairly well. But nevertheless, a huge thanks to you once again, Andy L and BC Skyman, for y'all support, because y'all help to make this channel possible each and every single day. And so with that, we are on to the next one, which crazily enough is a $100 super chat from Kimberly Brokaw. Hey! And Kimberly said, "Medicine for Matt, and take care and keep up the good work." And I gotta say, thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. I gotta say, it is a huge thing. I gotta thank you greatly for helping this channel keep on being a reality. You're an old guard. You've been here forever, Kimberly Brokaw. You've been here as long as BC Skyman and Hokey Redneck has been. I know for sure, because I remember that those three have been here really since the very beginning of time. But still, I gotta say, a massive thanks to you. Thank you so much for putting in the medicine for Matt. I'm sure Matthew's going to need a lot of Advils, a lot of Pepto-Bismols, a load of it. And Matthew, were you trying to say something right there?
No, I wasn't actually. No, I was not.
Oh, I heard something like, and I was like, I was like, you got something to say? But anyways, beyond that, a huge thank you so much to you once again, Kimberly Brokaw. Thank you for wanting us to keep up the good work, and we will. And a huge shout out to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, Christian Cruz asked a very interesting question. I can't answer that directly, but I can say that it's never 3 digits. It's always bigger than 3 digits. I can promise you that time. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And oh no, we're lagging, we're flatlining. Put out the lag alerts. Lag alert. We got lag. I'm so sorry, everyone. We had a little spike of lag there. We've been having that throughout the day intermittently. Like, well, really, ever since yesterday. Coincidence. But still, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, Kimberly Brokaw. And with that, we are on to the next one. And this next one is a $50 super chat from Hokey Redneck. And hey! Huge shout out to Hokey Redneck. And Hokey Redneck asked, what is up with British police threatening American citizens with arrest for social media posts? Well, that is an interesting question, Hokey Redneck. I don't really think I can answer although I'm trying to be as objective and neutral with it as possible. But I can tell you the parameters in which these American citizens would be arrested in. If you're in America and you're making posts on the internet, you will not be arrested. The British police are not going to fly overseas and arrest you in your home because you're making a comment. The British are talking about people who are inside of Britain making these comments. And if they make a comment like that on Twitter, apparently we still have lag. Let's hang tight for a minute. Let's hang tight. Hopefully the lag is over.
I think it's cleared up now.
I think it has cleared up. I think it's good. I think we're milky smooth again. But beyond that, if you're in Britain as an American citizen and you make a very weird comment, well, not a weird comment, that's kind of adding a bit of a spin to it. Let me change the wordage on that. If you make a comment that the British government does not approve of, you can end up being arrested for it, even if you are an American citizen. That's the way the statement was meant to come off as. It came off differently, though. It made it sound like they were going to extradite Americans from America, which is pretty ridiculous. They would never do that, and the U.S. government would never allow that. But still, that's kind of what it meant. I can't really go into it much more than that because the entire situation in which this is happening and that statement was made in is an entirely political thing inside the United Kingdom, and we can't go into that kind of stuff because we have a no politics rule. But I hope that does address that somewhat well. But, you know, I can't go into it much more than that. To be honest with you, I would love to talk about it more. I really would. But I can't, you know, because we have a no politics rule and I don't want to start dividing the channel into domestic political issues. We want to make sure that it's a united Western front. But, you know, of course, the Western world isn't perfect. Maybe that's an example. You know, it's kind of up to opinion whether people think that's a good example of the Western world having some flaws sometimes or not. But, you know, it is what it is, at least at the moment. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Hokey Redneck, a huge thanks to you once again for the massive support you've thrown in tonight and helping this channel to keep on running. And the next one is a $50 super chat from Carl Pattison. Hey! And Carl said, release some questions from the chat, please. And you know what, Carl? Usually the rule is that we only take one live chat question per one super chat, because if we took more than one per one super chat, we either will run out of live chats, or we may end up getting penned down in the super chat segment and never get to the live chat segment. But just tonight, Carl, just tonight, we're going to take 2 live chats for your super chat. This is the only one we're doing it for. So if someone throws in a super chat after this and they say take some from the chat, we're only going to be able to take 1. But just for Carl Pattison, because he's been around for a really long time, and I got to thank him so much massively for the support, we are going to make sure to get 2 of them. And so, with that, we are going to grab our first live chat question from Strong River Flats. And Strong River Flats said, do you think Russian conscripts will continue to surrender? I certainly think so. I think their morale is incredibly low. The surrenders that we're seeing, at least today, are certainly showing that it's not that they're getting encircled and surrendering. It's just that their morale is so low that when they engage in fights with the Ukrainians, they give up. So I would have to say, in my honest opinion, it's certainly, without a shadow of a doubt, that they have incredibly low morale, and that's why they're surrendering. And that morale is not going to improve, because it hasn't improved and their own country is being invaded. And you would think that morale would be pretty high when you're fighting on home turf. And if it's low fighting on home turf, they're going to keep surrendering well on into the future. And this is going to be a pretty big problem for Ukraine, because now they have to figure out a way to really take care of all of these prisoners of war, and there's a lot of them. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I thank you so much once again for that live chat. Very good one. And also, another question that I've seen, grabbing it straight from the live chat right now, Vito Lucena said, Enforcer, how has the vocal cord issue been? It's actually gotten a lot better. I took a break for a few days. One second. Let me... Okay, I thought I was about to sneeze right there. I think I might still. But if it happens, it happens. But the vocal cord issue has been... There we go. It finally happened. But the vocal cord issue has been way better. It's far improved, because I took a break on my vocal cords for a few days, and now my neck doesn't feel like absolute garbage. Because what had happened apparently is that I had ended up inflicting some vocal cord strain on myself, because when I talk on stream, it's actually a lot higher pitched than I normally talk. I actually get made fun of in real life by folks I hang out with a lot, like my family, that I'm monotone. Because if I talk in my normal way that I talk when I'm just kind of hanging out around the house, It's really monotone, and it's a lot lower pitched than the way I talk on air. This is kind of like my speaking voice, in a sense. It's the same, like, way I talk. I say the same stuff on air as I do off air. It's just that I bump up my voice a couple of octaves, so that way it sounds a little bit more exciting, and I can also fluctuate it. Because if I talk normally, I talk something like this, and that doesn't really sound as interesting, because I'm not really fluctuating my voice a lot. And so we want to make sure that my narration and the way I talk is interesting and exciting for everyone, because otherwise it's this, and this just drones on and on and on, and it does not sound that interesting. So if y'all are wondering, what do I talk like normally around my house, it's actually like this. So then I talk in a much higher tone, so that way I can fluctuate and everything, so that way it sounds a lot better. But anyways, it's doing a load better, and thank the Lord it is, because I was getting scared that might be something that we have to go to, like, a doctor, like an ear, throat, and nose doctor for, and see what had happened, and if there was any kind of, like, treatments for it or something like that. Because I was going ham for a couple of days on stream, like, with the voice. I was going high pitch. I was, like, doing turbo mode a lot. I was screaming a good bit at points, and it was apparently straining my neck muscles a good bit doing that. But anyways, I hope that does address that further well. Good night to Kimberly Brocall. I hope you sleep well. And with that, we are now moving on into the next question. But a huge shout out once again to Carl Pattison. Thank you so much for sponsoring those live chats and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are now moving on to a $50 super chat from Praise Adonai, a old guard through and through. And Praise Adonai said at Matt, yeah, and great job tonight. I think Ukraine action is intended to shake Putin's position and cause dissension. The other thing the incursion does is to gain useful land in case negotiations bring an end to the war. Ace in the hole. And I would agree with you completely on that, Praise that. And I think all of those are fairly good reasons why Ukraine would invade Kursk and also start an invasion of Belgorod as well. It's a negotiating chip for the future, and not only that, it is a fairly good way to make Putin a little bit unsure about continuing the war, because now the war is being brought back home. It's a homecoming of a sort. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I would agree with all of that completely, Praise that, and and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so a huge thank you to you so much once again, Praise that, and with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $30 super chat from Howard Turgell. Hey! And Howard said, respect for doing what you do 6 days a week. Best news show, second to none, and Chai Shalom. And Chai Shalom to you, Howard Turgell. And thank you so much for appreciating our work going on 6 days a week. And I got to say that it is absolutely incredible that folks like you enjoy this channel, Howard Turgell, and have such kind words to say. It is pretty crazy that we do this 6 days a week. Really, no one else does. Like, everyone else puts out a video like every other day or every third day, which means that you get like 2 videos a week. We do a video every day if we can, and we also do a live stream 6 days a week guaranteed, unless if there's some kind of like an ailment, like a near-death kind of a situation where one of us has come down with like the Wuhan whirlybird or something like that. You know, like there was a time that we actually had to take a week off air because I got that during law school, and then I just had to sit around and do nothing. But still, I got to thank you so much once again for the kind words and the support. And thank you for saying that we're the best news show, second to none. There are people out there who would disagree. To those people, I mean, whatever. You know, like, it's like, what does it matter? You know, it's like people enjoy the show here, and it's the #1 viewed live stream in this category for a reason. It's one of the biggest, hell, in the country. Like, no joke. Let me go 1 second. Let me go somewhere and see if that is still the case. Oh, Kill Tony was on last night. Oh, look at that. They got 105,000 live viewers. That's one hell of a number right there. But let's see where we were in the world, if we even showed up. Because I think this may be Monday's number, and we were not live. So, yeah, it didn't show up for us. We weren't live. Dang it. So we didn't get a figure. We didn't get a number. But still, beyond that, we were pretty on up there. It was a pretty good deal, at least for Sunday. We were up to like 17.4 thousand live viewers. I think we were the 27th largest show in America. And I got to say, I guess the numbers speak for themselves at this point, because you don't get up to number 27 in America for the largest live stream on the platform doing nothing and doing a terrible job. I would assume that we have to know at least a little bit of what we're talking about at that point. And I got to thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping this thing to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And the next one is a $25 super chat from Miranda Nelson. Hey, a longtime viewer as well. And Miranda said, are people discounting the chance Russian escalation could be chemical or biological instead of nuclear? I think a lot of people are. I think most people have really ruled out the idea of chemical or biological warfare being used by either side because we really haven't seen it a lot. Now, we have seen in some instances the Russians and then the Ukrainians later on using chloropicrin, which is a form of a strong tear gas or CS gas. We haven't really seen that being used a lot anymore, but it was being used for a time. Technically, that is chemical warfare according to the rules of war, but a lot of people would know that is not being chemical warfare because chemical gases of that sort, like chloropicrin or tear gas, is used a lot in a civil kind of a setting with the police and riot control and things like that. So not real. I don't really think so. I mean, like maybe chloropicrin, if we want to count that, technically, yes, they probably will. But in my opinion, I don't think so. I don't think they'll be using that too much. And I think that's why people are discounting it, really. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Miranda Nelson, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Jocelyn White. And hey! And Jocelyn said, thank you. I appreciate both of you for your dedication. This is my go-to news. And take one from the chat. And I gotta thank you greatly so much, Jocelyn White, for the kind words. And thank you for saying that this is your go-to channel. We have heard that so much tonight. I actually heard that a lot yesterday and today. A lot of people have been saying that this is their go-to channel. And I gotta say that it's pretty crazy to me that we have ended up becoming a lot of people's #1 go-to. Not a lot of people really venture out and watch other channels at this point. It's almost a largely contained community. It's actually growing rapidly every day. Yesterday we grew from 259 to 260,000, and then today we grew from 260,000 to 261,000. There's about 1,000 new people joining every single day, which is pretty wild when you think about it. I mean, that's an entire battalion and 2 companies joining the stream every single day, brand new, and they stay around. That is wild to see, wild to think about, really. And I got to give you a huge thanks for supporting this channel, Joshua White, and being one of those folks that made this your go-to news channel. And thank you so much for appreciating our dedication. A lot of people have been saying that again tonight. And it's something crazy to think about that this channel runs 6 days a week. I said this a minute ago, but the reality is that not a lot of people work like that on YouTube. Like a lot of people take mental health breaks, things like that. I don't really get the mental health break thing, you know, my personal opinion. Like, yeah, like what you see is pretty rough, but that's kind of what you sign up for, you know, because I'm kind of of the mindset of, you know, if something's bad and it sucks a little bit, that's kind of what you signed up for, so why complain about it? You kind of knew what was going to happen going into it. So, you know, like with this, like seeing gruesome content every day, like people getting blown to pieces, and I see that, you know, uncensored and stuff every day. At this point, I just kind of accept that for what it is, you know, like it's kind of tough to deal with. Well, actually, it is kind of really tough to deal with at times because you really think about it. And sometimes, to be honest with you, I'll actually get nightmares about the stuff that I've seen. Like 2 nights ago, like actually it was Sunday night after that stream, I actually ended up getting a pretty gruesome nightmare off of what I've seen. You know, and some people are like, man, you need to take a mental health break. There is no such thing. Like a lot of the Ukrainian soldiers over there don't get mental health breaks for the stuff they see. They have to be there every day. You know, they might get rotated off 2 weeks after they got on the front and then have a week of R&R or maybe 2 weeks of R&R and then they have to go back. They don't really get a break from this kind of stuff. And for that reason, I feel like it's kind of a little self-righteous of myself to try and take off days from the stuff. It's horrific, sure, and it is tough to deal with, but, you know, at the same time, I kind of signed up for it, so I kind of accept that. I kind of apply that mindset to everything, really. You know, like when people say stuff like, you know, I was, let me think of a comment. I'm trying to make sure that it won't be that hot of a take, because, you know, people will try and spin it out of proportion. You know, when folks are like, I signed up for a security job and someone lunged at me and tried to stab me, I'm terrified and scared. It's like, well, you know, you signed up to be a security officer. There's a chance that people are going to attack you because, you're the one having to go into a confrontation. It's just kind of what you signed up for. You kind of have to deal with it. That's kind of my mindset with everything, and that's why I maybe I don't know. Maybe it'll come off as I don't have a lot of sympathy for some people who complain about some things, but you know, if you signed up for something and something happens, you kind of should have known that that was going to happen. Like, you know, like skydiving, say. You know, like you go skydiving, you sign a waiver when you go skydiving. This parachute might fail, and I might die. But no one's responsible for this because I understood the risk. That is a waiver of liability. And that is literally a legal document of someone saying, I understand the risks involved, but if I get hurt or die doing this, I can't complain about it because I knew it was going to happen. And that's the kind of the mindset I have on stuff like that. Like if you go skydiving and then your parachute fails and you end up nearly dying when you hit the ground, it's like you can't really complain and be like, I'm a parachute survivor, you know, like a parachute victim survivor. Everyone ought to worship me now. Like I'm like, I can't really get behind that too much because it's like, you know, you kind of knew the risks. Like I have some sympathy, sure, but it's like, you know, I can't act like, you know, oh my goodness, what a tragedy. Because it's like you kind of knew that was going to happen. You assumed the risks. And then you did it. So, you know, it's like, I can't really, you know, have too much sympathy there. But anyways, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least with our work ethic. It's one that's not really seen on really any other YouTube channel. I think there's maybe like one or two out there who do stuff every day like we do. But I still thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, keep this thing going, so that way we could deal with everything we do in the background and just keep on trucking. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do it. And so let's see here. We have to sign a waiver to watch this channel. I mean, yeah, you know, like when people come on this channel and then you see something that's a little rough and then people want to complain about it. It's like, well, you kind of signed up for it. You know, it's like you came on a channel that's talking about war. You're going to see war stuff. It's like, you know, like I don't get people like that. Or let me think of another example. Since we're on this, I would have. Let me think. I'm trying to think of another good one. When you're flying a plane, you get on a plane. You have a little bit of an understanding the plane could crash and you could die, or you could get hurt really badly. And then people get in a plane crash, and then they want to complain about it. Like, I get complaining about it too a little bit, because I'm sure there's some negligence involved somewhere in that. But at the same time, you can't make it sound like it's just an unfortunate tragedy, woe is me, a little bit too much. Because, you know, it's like, it was a plane. Like, there's a chance of crashing, just like when you get in a car. You know, it's like, there's a chance of crashing. Sure, you can complain about the negligence of people involved, but you can't sit there, you know, and make it like a whole woe is me thing. They kind of knew the risks getting on the plane. Like, you know, that's kind of me. Like, you know, like doing this, to be entirely honest with y'all. Like, there is an inherent risk because of the amount of people who have harassed us from a specific group, that some crazy person could actually come to our house or find us when we're out in public and shoot me. You know, maybe killing me, maybe paralyzing me. I don't know. But I kind of accept the risks when I run this channel. Like, I'm not going to bitch about it too much. Sure, I'd probably bitch about being paralyzed if I ended up living through it. If I'm dead, I promise you I'm not complaining. I'm dead and 6 feet under. But if I was paralyzed, you're not going to see me complaining about it all too much. You know, going like, oh, woe is me. You know, because it's like, I kind of understood there were psycho people out there in the world. If I got injured or killed doing this, it is what it is. I do this because I want to. I don't do this because I'm not expecting anything bad to happen. Well, nothing bad to happen, really. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. Not that rough a thing. Seeing some people saying this isn't even close to actually being in combat. I'd agree. That's why I don't really make a point too much to talk about this, because it's like, there's a lot of people going through a lot worse. I just watch it. There are people out there actually having to live this stuff, and they see it in person. So, you know, I don't really talk about this all too much, this side of things, but it is kind of rough to deal with here and there. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Huge shout out to you once again, Josh and Y, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to take one from the live chat. This one goes to Richard Head, and he said, why haven't we heard much about attackums lately? That's a really good question, actually. I would not have a good answer for you, Richard Head. We haven't heard a lot about, let's see, we haven't heard a lot about attacks anywhere. I was trying to think of one that we could mention. To be honest, I haven't heard of any of them. Maybe they have run out of ATACMS. Maybe that's the best explanation I can give for now. But I wouldn't really have a good explanation beyond that. Maybe they're holding them for a major attack in the future, but I can't really give you a good answer because we really don't know enough about what happened to the ATACMS to explain the lack of their usage. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are now moving on into the next one. Huge shout out once again to Josh and White for supporting that live chat and helping us to keep this thing running. And the next super chat goes to Scott Mensing, who threw in a 20. Hey! And Scott said, with the Ukrainian invasion into Russia, we know they aren't destroying buildings or infrastructure, unlike the Russians in Ukraine. How are they treating Russians that refuse to leave? / how are they received by the populace? Insight. We do have some insight. It seems as though the Russian public is very passive to the Ukrainian forces in Kursk at the moment. They're not really doing a lot against them, and they're not really doing a lot in support of them. It's just nothing, really. I mean, you know, it's like, it is what it is. And also, as far as the Ukrainians go, the Ukrainians aren't really treating any Russian citizens poorly. Largely, both sides are acting like the other is invisible. The Ukrainians don't really do a lot to the Russian citizens. The Russian citizens aren't really doing a lot in support or in opposition of the Ukrainians. Everyone's just kind of doing what they do, from what we can tell. The best way I can maybe explain that. But still, a huge thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because that's maybe the best answer I can give is based off of video and picture evidence. We don't really see either of them doing anything to the other in any way, shape, or form. But with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Mark Stoico. Hey! And that's actually sound. One second, I got to go check the actual ledger on YouTube itself, because that sounds a little new. Like, for some reason, and it is. Mark Stoico, this is your first super chat ever. A huge shout out to you, and a huge thanks for your support and helping this channel to keep on running. I gotta say, it's amazing to know that you want to super chat this channel and support it. It's always a bit of a big step for a lot of people. Not really a lot of people actually support the channel with super chats. Like, so far, we've gotten 89,000 views on this stream, and out of 89,000 people who have individually watched this stream, we have gotten maybe 30 super chats. So it's actually very rare for anyone to actually want to support the channel. But nevertheless, you did, Mark, and I got to thank you massively for the support. And Mark said, keep up the awesome reporting, guys, and thank you so much. We try our best. Sometimes we get some information wrong. We'll admit that. I mean, you know, we would be stupid to say we get everything right and we're perfect. But we try and improve here and there. I feel like it's a very good kind of a news stream that we run, and I'm happy that you enjoy it. And so I got to thank you massively once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Mark Stoico, because if it wasn't for folks like you who support this channel and help it to keep on running, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality, and we wouldn't be able to be here for you to be here right now. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one, which is another $20 super chat from BC Skyman. Hey, absolute legend of the channel, and a huge shout out to you for a second time tonight. Your support, like I said earlier, helps this channel to keep on running, and I know you know that we are greatly appreciative of the support, and I thank you greatly for that once again, and I hope I addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are now going to be moving on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Darren Quinn. And a huge shout out to Darren Quinn once again. Thank you so much for the massive support. And Darren said, the Ukraine spider web is catching many Ruski flies, and I would have to agree. It is catching a large amount of Russian flies. They are catching thousands of them, as a matter of fact. And I got to say that is really crazy. Like, when you think about it, it's almost like a miniature version of the Gulf War and the Kursk Oblast. But still, I thank you so much once again for support. I would agree with that completely. And of course, thank you once again, Darren Quinn, for being an incredibly long-time channel viewer and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Yuri Dovgon. I hope I said that correctly, Yuri, but still, thank you so much once again for support. Yuri, you didn't throw in a comment, but the support means a lot, and it helps this channel to keep on running, and we are greatly appreciative of you. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang. I mispronounced that entire thing. I'm so sorry, AMX10. But AMX10 said, can you resume the United States and Iran discussion? I'm really excited about what you have to say about it. And we can, AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang. We can. And we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, actually, on stream. But I'll try and talk about it a little bit more and explain my talking points, because it's something, it's something to explain the talking points with the whole Middle East thing, because not a lot of people get it. Hold up, y'all. Hold up, y'all. We got a good bot. Yesnia. Ah, dang it, Matthew. Got him. Hang on. I was going to read it. This channel is ran by the CIA. It's propaganda. Nothing else. Ukraine is doomed. 500,000 Ukrainian men dead in vain. Dang, they were hitting us hard, and then they were gone. But I gotta say, I love hearing that that some people believe we're funded and run by the CIA. Well, that would be a high honor if we were, to be honest. I mean, it would actually be a step up from where we are right now, because we're literally just two folks in the bottom of our parents' house running the show. We pay rent to be here, but still, we all had to justify we pay rent to be here. But beyond that, yeah, you know, we're literally just doing this as we do it. And I love to see people come in and say that we're agents of so-and-so, or we're paid by the CIA, because apparently we're putting on such a good production and such good information that it looks like we have to have some sort of professional organization actually supporting us or something. Love to see it. I love to see it. But anyways, with that, hypervigilance confirmed CIA. I mean, hell, I mean, like, you know, I wish we would get paid by the CIA, because it would really help out with some of the woes behind the channel. But I'm just kidding, really, to be honest. I wouldn't want to be CIA, at least doing this channel, because then we wouldn't be able to say what we want, because, you know, there would be certain requirements and stuff, so I wouldn't really be that big of a fan of it. But anyways, moving on from that, and moving back into the question that AMX 10 Speed Bang Bang had, the situation in the Middle East is a pretty tough one at the moment. To try and, I'm going a lot because I'm really trying to think out a way to explain this. The Islamic Republic of Iran is an incredibly hostile nation. It is openly anti-American, and not only that, it is hostile to our interests within the Middle East. Primarily, it's hostile to our interests in the Middle East, which is really the major issue that we have with the Iranians. We have to keep the sphere of influence we have. And this is something that a lot of Americans don't understand, because there's kind of a big argument against being out there in the world. There's a huge group of people who believe we should be openly isolationist in the modern age, but the kind of world that America existed in the past when we were isolationist doesn't exist anymore. We have been such a massive shaping and influencing factor on the world that we can no longer just come back to our continent and just kind of hang out here and do nothing overseas. Our economy is tied entirely to the global economy. Some people say that's a globalist thing, you know, like a globalist mindset. Maybe it is a little bit, but really I look at it as reality. I mean, the United States has a major amount of economic interest in the Middle East, not only that in Europe, and also within East Asia as well. That really makes sure that we have to be heavily involved in these areas if we want to continue to get the products and also continue to have the economic prosperity we have. A lot of the money we make in America comes from foreign trading, and a lot of the goods we use in America comes from foreign trading. And some people would say we could bring it back to America. Not really so. The U.S. consumer base requires cheap consumables, cheap consumer goods, if you want to call it that. And cheap consumer goods can no longer easily be made here in the United States. So it has to go somewhere else. Because we shifted from being an industrial economy to a service-based economy. With that comes mandatory changes, like moving things overseas that are some of the cheaper products to be manufactured over there. And so that shift is a natural one. China is actually undergoing that shift right now. And a lot of people say, oh, you know, like we should be like China, this major industrial power. But China isn't really an industrial power anymore. Their industrial capacity is actually starting to wane, and it's starting to shrink every year because now they are making the transformation into a service-based economy as well. It is a natural evolution, a lot like how an agricultural or an agrarian society will become an industrial society. And then from there, the industrial society evolves into a service-based society or a service-based economy. That is just the natural evolution of things, and with that, certain things move elsewhere. Like, for example, with an industrial-based society, you kind of have the best of both worlds, at least a little bit. Because you still have the agricultural side of things, but a lot of people don't really work in agriculture anymore by the time an industrial society reaches fever pitch. Pretty much everyone is in industry of some sort, and there's very small amounts of people involved in agriculture. But then when you move to a services-based economy, Then you have a small amount of farmers, but they do pretty much the farming for the entirety of the country. Only 1% of America's population works in the agricultural industry, or at least farming, but they produce pretty much the entirety of the food that America consumes every year. Kind of like with the industrial side of things. The industrial population is going to wane. Most people are going to start working in service-based kind of economic systems. They're not going to be working in industry anymore. And then once we evolve our economy so much, then we actually evolve from service-based industries. And then we move on to something else entirely. And a lot of people may actually kind of get a little bit of an idea that the service-based economy is even starting to move a little bit overseas as well, as we move into something entirely different. I don't even know what it is at this point. But many of y'all will call up a call center in America, and many of y'all will hear that the person in the call center isn't necessarily an American. They're from overseas. They're from a hired out third party that does this service-based job. And the reason why this third party is overseas is because some of these jobs, some of these service-based jobs, are even considered so low level at this point by the American population, it's really hard to hire people for those jobs. Or if you can hire them, you have to pay them so much, it's no longer economical for that service. And so then those jobs move overseas as well, because those are the folks who will take it on. They're going to be in not as advanced or economically successful countries, and it's going to be places where people would accept that kind of pay to do that kind of job, because that job's better than no job. So that's kind of how things work in America. But still, the whole point of explaining that is that America is tied into the world for the large part. It's how we have the kind of success we have today, and that's how we grow our economy further and further. Like, let me go show you all the US GDP. This is the US GDP. And this is measured from 1960 all the way up till today. And y'all can see that a large amount of our economic growth. I wish I could get a better graph for this. Let me go see US GDP from, let's see here, 1900 to the present. Let me see. Let's see here. Yeah, here we go. This is fairly okay. Let me go try and grab this really quickly. Dang. So let's see here. Nominal. Is this the one we're looking for? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So this is what we're looking for. So anyways, this is the U.S. economy from 1929 all the way up to the present day. I want to show you this for an important reason. We're going to look at the nominal GDP figure, which is the one that we usually use to gauge the economic success or the economic size of one country compared to the other. In 1929, our nominal GDP in the United States was $105 billion. That was it. That's in modern day monetary figures, by the way. It was $105 billion. That's not really a lot. But you will notice something really interesting. Check this out. World War II was a massive time of economic growth. The economy was growing 17.8% in 1941, 19% in 1942, 17% in 1943, 7.9% in 1944, and then it shrunk by about 1% in 1945 because there was a small little kind of like an economic downturn that happened at the end of World War II when the war industry was shifting back into consumer goods. But once we got back into consumer goods, you can see generally the GDP grew at a fairly significant pace throughout the decades since then. Of course, there were small recessions here and there where the economy would shrink in size. We've had, let's see, in 2008, the economy hardly grew at all. It really didn't grow much at all. But beyond that, still, to explain this as best I can, y'all can see that at World War II, when we really got involved in being everywhere in the world at the same time, that's when America's economy exploded. And since then, it has required us to stay involved in the entire world to be able to keep our economy growing, because it's the kind of relations and the kind of influence that we built in World War II that helps us to be able to trade with all of these nations and helps us to continue to grow our economy to this day. That is something that is a reality of life. You can't really deny that. You can't really say that that's not the case. That is 100% the case. And so going off of that, I would say that with that, getting all the way around this in a full circle, because that was probably the longest explanation I can make on a side note of a side note, that is why we were involved in the Middle East, and that's why the Middle East is a very big deal, like every other region in the world. And so Iran goes against our interests in this region. for that reason, we have to go against them. They are actively supporting proxy forces to attack our allies in the area that we have large economic ties to. And not only that, we have strategic ties with them. Those strategic ties are as important as the economic ties, because the strategic ties help us to be able to have the muscle wherever we need to be able to stop them from getting rid of our interests in the region, economic for the most part. And so we have a couple of options with Iran. We can either go about it diplomatically, or we can go about it in a state of war or a martial form. And so we have those two options. So far, we have tried the route of diplomacy, and very clearly that route has failed. And there's no doubt about that. We are seeing that both sides are no longer willing to negotiate and talk at this point, and so diplomacy has failed. Once again, remember, there's only two options. We either conduct a path of diplomacy or a path of war. If the diplomacy path has failed, the only other path that we logically have to work off of is the path of war. To deny the use of the path of war is to continue down the path of diplomacy, which has clearly already failed. And so by continuing down a diplomatic path, we are simply wasting time. We need to be aggressive against Iran. We've exhausted the diplomatic avenue. We have to be in the Middle East. We have heavy economic and strategic interests in the area. And so we are, by necessity for the large part, pushed down the path of war. So for that reason, I would say the United States needs to take some very strong actions against the Iranians. And I see someone saying that they're religious zealots. You can make that argument, but really for America, we're kind of a step removed from that. For Israel, that matters, because their entire fight with Iran in Iran's fight with Israel is a kind of an ideological one of religion. That's largely what keeps pushing that forward. But for America, that does not matter, because we're like, the majority religion in America is Christianity. It's like 60 something, 70%. The majority religion in Israel is Judaism, and the majority religion in Iran, I believe it's Shiite Islam. So it may be Sunni. I might get those two sects mixed up there, but still, religiously, we're not really tied up in this conflict. So that doesn't make a lot of sense for us to fight this on an ideological perspective. And not only that, the U.S. government is divided from religion. Religion and, well, the church and the state are divided in this country by constitutional amendment. And so we can't go to war saying we don't like a certain religious ideology, so we're going to fight them. That would make no sense at all. So going off of that, we have to look at this from an entirely clinical perspective. We have to look at this more so as an economic exercise. They're threatening our economic interests in the area, so we have to work off of that. Just want to make that clear, because I saw a lot of people saying some different things in the chat about that. We have nothing to do with religious ideology. One, because it's not our problem in the Middle East. We're not even involved in religion. And two, the other thing is that the United States government doesn't make decisions based off of religion, and we shouldn't. That's a bad idea. So going off of that, is an economic issue. So we need to do something against Iran. The path of war, we have steps until we get into a full-out war. One, we can start to have a show of force, which is what we're kind of doing right now. The second thing to do is limited strikes against Iran. So airstrikes in key areas, try and destroy the Iranian Navy, destroy nuclear development sites near Isfahan and other regions within Iran. We could do things like that. And then the third and final option is an all-out war with Iran, where we end up conducting a large aerial bombing campaign in an attempt to overthrow their government in some sort of an invasion. And so I would say that that's the path we should take. We're already kind of on the show of force path at this moment, but I believe we should move on to limited strikes. And if limited strikes don't work, then we go into an all-out war against them. Either way, they will have to back off. And if anyone comes in to support them, we could largely veer them away, because we're the ones who were there first. No one's going to try and push themselves in the door to get involved at that point, because it would be a little too dangerous. So as long as we assert ourselves and deal with Iran the way I'm saying we should deal with them, everything largely should turn out okay, at least from what I would understand and at least what I've thought of at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, and a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang. I hope that it addressed that incredibly well, And thank you so much for wanting to hear about it. It was a very hard thing for me to explain because I haven't thought about this in really great detail, and I try to explain way too much of that in different little rabbit holes at a single time, but I hope it made a little bit of sense. But still, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And once again, another huge shout out to BC Scamming, who threw in another $10 super chat without a comment, and Greg Carmen, who also threw in a 10 as well. Big shout out to both of y'all. Both of y'all help this channel to keep on rolling. Y'all make it possible. And if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running right now. And so, once again, huge thanks to both of y'all. I thank y'all greatly. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Khan. And Khan said, well, no news is good news. No major changes. Thanks, guys. And no problem. We had some major news today, but I like to see when the news is a little bit low. Our channel doesn't get the kind of viewership that it gets when the news is high, but is that really what we're here for, is views? Not really. Other people are here for that, and then we kind of have to think on that metric because other people kind of force you to think that way. But beyond that, I'm kind of happy when the news is low because it means that folks aren't out there getting into bad situations or suffering or getting hurt or worse. But still, I gotta say, thank you so much once again for support, Con. Thank you for appreciating the channel and enjoying it and supporting it to help it to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from HerpDerpNV. And HerpDerpNV said, looks like Orc Simp, Oh goodness. HerpDerp, I would thank you so much for the support, but usually we don't address things like that. Now, I will say I don't like that guy at all. I want to make that very clear. We don't like or support that guy. But getting into hypotheses and comments on that may not be true in the future could get us into a little bit of trouble, legal trouble. So, you know, in case the guy for some reason picked a fight with us. So we can't really go into that too much. I do thank you so much for the support, though, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I will tell you that my personal opinion on that guy, which the guy he's talking about, if y'all are wondering, is Scott Ritter. I'm not a big fan of the guy on a personal level. He's got a very questionable past. I mean, you know, he is a convicted felon for some very questionable things. And not only that, he seems to be, at least in my personal opinion, I want to make that very clear, he seems to be a little too chummy with the Russians for my taste, being a pro-Western, pro-American kind of a person. That guy's not really my cup of tea, and I don't really like the fella. But, of course, I can't really say much more than that, because getting beyond that and trying to speak about it, that could end up getting us into a little bit of hot water. But still, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from The Dead Gentleman. Oh, my goodness, are you okay? Like, beyond that stuff, The Dead Gentleman said, give Matt some tea and grab a message from the chat so people don't complain. And people complain no matter what, The Dead Gentleman. They really do. Like, at this point, like, one thing we've learned after doing this for 2.5 years, people will always complain. It's impossible to not have people complain. People complain about how loud we talk, if we shout, what jokes we make, what news we cover, what we say, in general, our personal takes on things. People complain about everything. So, you know, if I would never worry about people complaining to The Dead Gentleman. To be honest, it doesn't really even bother us anymore. We just get a big laugh out of it when people complain, because, you know, like, it's either you cry about it or you laugh about it. I'd rather laugh about things than cry about them. Generally, I apply that to everything. That's why we joke around so much on this channel, you know, about literally anything and everything, even about war, because why cry through it when you could laugh through it instead? That's a lot better of a way to approach things. But still, I got to thank you so much once again for support, and we will make sure to grab a question from the chat in honor of you, The Dead Gentleman. And that live chat is from Emily. And Emily said, with Ukrainian forces in Russia, could we eventually see Putin pushed out of power? Maybe so. I don't think the Ukrainian forces are going to do it. Like, if we're talking about an invasion of Moscow and the overthrow of the Russian government, I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the worst that could happen would be that someone would conduct a coup and overthrow Putin. So maybe there's a possibility for that, but I feel like the possibility is still fairly low, maybe a 15% chance on any given week. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Huge shout out once again to The Dead Gentleman for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. Also, I see some people in the chat joking before we move on. I just complained about Bayraktar song. That's some people just joking around about complaining. I'm not talking about Most of y'all love the channel and enjoy it. I'm talking about those small groups of outliers, because there's always a small little group that will always complain about everything. It's insane. Like, it really is. Like, to clarify that a little bit more, because I don't want that to come off like everyone in the live chat complains about everything, because most of y'all just love the show and just enjoy every piece of it. So I don't want y'all thinking I'm talking about all of y'all like that. Not one bit. But there is a small group of people out there who always complain about something. You can make like the most inoffensive joke possible, and people will complain about it. Well, hell, you know, there are a lot of people who just complain about how we run this show, like how we keep kind of like a little bit more of a lighthearted tone and joke around it, and that's like a deliberate choice. I don't think people get that. Like, we can be solemn and somber. We've done that in the past in specific occasions when heinous things have happened inside of Ukraine. You know, we can do that. We could do that for a whole show if we wanted to, but it's not a good idea. Why in the like I don't know how in the world I can explain this a million times over. I feel like I say it the same way every single time, but how in the world is crying about something and weeping about it every single day changing the situation? It doesn't. You know, like, it just doesn't at all. And that's kind of the reason why we joke about and laugh about things on this channel, even kind of rough things like war or watching Russians get obliterated. Watching Russians get obliterated, kind of a little bit of a different thing. And I'll explain why we kind of joke around about that here in a second. But it is a war. These things are going to happen. And whether I made all of y'all feel sad about it, or whether I made all of y'all laugh a little bit at the jokes we made through it, the war is still going to be on tomorrow. People are still going to be getting killed tomorrow. People are still going to be getting hurt. So why in the world am I going to make y'all feel bad about it when y'all feeling bad about it or joking about it isn't going to change what's actually happening? You know, that's something that I have never gotten on the sphere, because a lot of people, like, you know, either individuals who watch this channel or other groups want to make gripe with how we run this channel and how we do it. I don't get why people would want to be sad about it, you know, because, yeah, it's a horrendous thing, but why in the world feel sad about it? That just makes it double worse, you know, like, it just makes it twice as bad, because it's going to happen. It doesn't matter whether you cry or not. And another thing that I don't think people get is that there is a thing such as gallows humor, and to cover this for 2.5 years, if I was to cover this in a solemn and sad way every day and act like I had to weep and cry about it every day, I would be a nervous mental breakdown by this point. I have seen terrible things on picture and video that have never been shown on air. We couldn't even get close to showing it to most of y'all anywhere because it's pretty damn bad. You actually start to think about it after a while. And you can't sit there and treat that as serious as it is every single day. It's going to get to you. Like, I don't think people get it. Maybe people don't get that because not everyone else is here watching all of this happen every single day like we are, almost 7 days a week. So maybe people don't get that. But it would be impossible for us to act solemn and sad about this every single time that we showed it on air, because we wouldn't be able to mentally keep up that kind of mindset for years and be okay. Like we couldn't. So we have to end up joking around about it, and everyone jokes around about this stuff in reality. Tough things that happen. Like, Ukrainian soldiers are laughing and joking out there on the front lines in the middle of a firefight where they could die. Like, they could legitimately die, and they're having to end up fighting Russians and killing them. They still end up laughing and cracking jokes because the situation is such a tough one, and it's such a emotionally overbearing one. If you were really to take it at face value, you can't treat it seriously. You have to joke about it, because otherwise people aren't going to be able to get along with it and keep going, you know, mentally. People who are first responders, we have first responders that watch this channel pretty much every single night. I know some of them personally. They're very nice people. They have to joke about stuff too in their line of work, and they see incredibly tough things as firefighters, as ambulance workers, stuff like that. They see incredibly horrendous things, and if they treated every single thing wildly seriously and cried about everything, they would be a mental wreck in about a week or two. That's why we kid around about things, because it's tough to deal with already. Why in the world am I going to make y'all feel twice as bad about something that's still going to be going on tomorrow when y'all can't stop it? I would rather make y'all at least feel a little bit better about it, because it's tough to deal with already. Why in the world am I going to make y'all feel twice as bad about something that's still going to be going on tomorrow when y'all can't stop it? I would rather make y'all at least feel a little bit better about it, because it's tough to deal with already. Why in the world am I going to make y'all feel twice as bad about something that's still going to be going on tomorrow when y'all can't stop it? I would rather make y'all at least feel a little bit better about it, because it's tough to deal with already. Why in the world am I going to make y'all feel twice as bad about something that's still going to be going on tomorrow when y'all can't stop it? I would rather make y'all at least feel a little bit better about it, because it's tough to deal with already. Why in the world am I going to make y'all feel twice as bad about something that's still going to be going on tomorrow when y'all can't stop it? I would rather make y'all at least feel a little bit better about it, because it's tough feel a little bit upbeat. I mean, yeah, y'all seeing rough stuff, and it is rough, but I'd rather have y'all feel a little bit upbeat about it. At least that the Ukraine is fighting for a good cause, than just have y'all crying about it at the end of every day, like some others do. That just doesn't really make a lot of sense. But still, I gotta say a huge thanks to you once again for sponsoring that live chat, The Dead Gentleman, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to run the special kind of channel we have here and be able to keep this thing running every day, where we can have this kind of a really unique style. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from David Long. And hey, and David Long said, I heard that Germany is going to send the best anti-air system, the Orlikov from Rheinmetall. And have you heard much on this? And check out the system, please. First chance to be in super chat. Go LSA. Hey, and thank you so much for the support, David Long, and helping the channel to keep on running. Now let's take a look at the Orlikov. The Orlikov. I'm trying to... So I found Orlikon. Are you talking about that that Rheinmetall anti-air turret? Let's see. Rheinmetall. Let's see. Rheinmetall anti-air gun. If you're talking about the Orlikon Sky Ranger 30, we do know about that, and they actually are in Ukraine. Interestingly enough, surprise, surprise, they are there. Let me see if I can find the picture of the one that is in Ukraine. Dang, I can't find it. I hate that. I would show it to you if I could, but I'll show you the picture of the one that we have, at least from the Rheinmetall website, which is this one right here. These are really cool systems. We've actually seen them in action a little bit, not in Ukraine, but we've seen them in action elsewhere. They are wildly good. They're very effective. From what we know, one of them is in Ukraine and has been set up and will be used. We just haven't seen it in service or in use yet, but still a wildly cool system. And it's kind of expensive, I'm not going to lie, but it's still wildly effective from what we know as well. But still, a huge thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also another thing I would want to show y'all, this is actually something pretty cool. This gun is actually used on a different platform. And let me go see CV9030. Let me go see if I can pull this one up for y'all. So the best example I can pull up here is this picture. That's actually not a big picture at all. Let me see if I can... Dang, that is a tiny picture. Why in the world is it so small? Wait, hang on. Maybe I'm thinking about a 9035. Hang on. Let me go look at this. Yeah, this is the one I'm thinking about. Okay, so the CV9035, from what I understand, uses a very similar, if not identical, gun. And this is it right here. This is the CV90 series that a lot of y'all have seen in Ukraine, but it has a different turret layout and a different gun. It's a 35mm main gun. I believe it's made by Orlikon, and I think it's the exact same gun they have in this anti-air turret. As you can see that the muzzle brake is identical on both of them. These things are really cool. I actually think that the CV9035 is probably my favorite looking one of the CV90 series. So I hope that does kind of address that well, kind of also show where this gun system is used elsewhere, because they're really neat. I mean, the CV90 series is one of the coolest APCs, or the IFVs out there that you could see in the world, and I just love them. I think they're incredibly cool in every single variant that they have for them. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Huge thanks to you once again for your first super chat ever, David Long, and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die. And moving on from that and into the next one, we got a $10 super chat from the Doctor. Hey, the Doctor's in the house. Tell us what's wrong with Enforcer Matt. He's got Spanish flu. Thank you, the Doctor. But beyond that, huge shout out to the Doctor and the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And the Doctor said, absolutely love the daily uploads regarding war updates, man. Takes a lot of research to make it happen every day. Just wanted to say that I bet those North Koreans are really enjoying the goats. And Matthew, what is he talking about?
He's actually talking about the goats that the North Koreans gave to the Russians in return for all the artillery shells that they got from the Russians. So Putin sent the North Koreans goats as a thank you.
You know, that is like the most slap in the face thing I've ever heard. Like, legitimately.
I know, right?
What?
I said, I know, right? That was the most like insulting thing they could ever send back. It's like a couple hundred goats.
Well, no. It's more insulting not because it's just goats. Goats are what caused the famine in North Korea. You know that, right, Matthew?
I actually did not know that.
Yeah, so let me tell you a little story really quickly, because this is actually a pretty crazy one. So the only reason the North Koreans are starving these days is because of goats. And this is what makes this gift so offensive. You see, back when Kim Jong-il was the leader in North Korea, they wanted to figure out an idea or a way to get more protein into the diet of your average North Korean. And so the way that they came up with that was goats, because goats would eat grass. Grass grew everywhere in North Korea because there was hardly any arable land. And so they could just let them pretty much roam wherever they wanted to in Korea, as long as it was in a place that had grass. They'd eat it, and they keep growing, and they could get more protein into the diet of the North Koreans. So they ended up overbreeding the goats. They had millions of these things in North Korea, and they ate every bit of grass there was everywhere. And when you eat all of the grass and you get rid of the root systems and stuff like the goats do when they eat it, the topsoil has absolutely no anchor. It just goes wherever the rain takes it. And so a monsoon season came in 1991, and it practically washed away all of the topsoil in North Korea, and so nothing could grow. And because the goats died, because there was no grass to eat, because the topsoil that grew the grass washed away, and also due to the fact that the North Koreans couldn't grow crops because all of the topsoil had washed away, the North Korean people starved to death over the next few years. It was the Great Famine, as it's called in North Korea, and that is why, to this day, the North Koreans are known as starving, is because of goats. And so Putin rewards the North Koreans by giving them goats. That is like the most offensive thing ever. Like, it truly is. That's like giving the Chinese as a gift sparrows. You know, or better yet, shitty iron foundries. Like that's like the same thing to the Chinese. Or better yet, that's like giving to the Germans, like, I don't know. Let me think. I'm trying to think of something that would be extremely offensive to a country. Let me think. I can't really think.
Get risky.
Yeah, that could get risky, and I can't really think of any anyways. Like, my mind's completely blank. But anyways, that is offensive as hell. I didn't even know that, to be honest. To be honest with you, the doctor, I think that was in Matthew's short war summary today. Not mine. Yeah, it was. Yeah, Matthew's over there dying. He's like, yes. It was in mine. And I'm like, oh, poor Matthew. He will be long gone, but never forgotten. I'll tell you all that. But beyond that, I got to say, a huge thank you so much once again for the support, the doctor. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And I would have to assume that they are really enjoying those goats. And thank you so much for enjoying the daily updates. Matthew made the one today. I made the one yesterday. And Matthew's today got about 200,000 views, and mine got about 330,000 views yesterday. So they're doing wildly well, and I got to thank everyone for watching them. I got to thank everyone for enjoying them, and especially you, the doctor, for your support, because you apparently enjoy them quite greatly. And so huge thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $10 super chat from Josh. And Josh said, do you think Russia will declare war on NATO for this, or make an excuse for this? I certainly don't think they're declaring war on NATO, because if anything, the Kursk offensive is showing that the Russians do not have any extra troops to divert out of Ukraine at this point, combat troops at least. It's truly empty out there in Russia. So I don't think they'll be going to war with NATO. I think they're going to have to sit back and just be completely helpless about this at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And you know what, folks? I just thought of something offensive you could give to the Germans as a gift. Give them an Austrian man who failed art school as a gift. Like, that would be the most insulting thing you could give the Germans. Like, really, like, and I'm sure many of y'all know why. But think about that. That would be like the most insulting thing. That would be like Austria going, hey, big thanks, Germany, for like the economic help y'all gave. Here's this Austrian guy who failed art school. We're just going to give him to you as a gift. Like, the Germans would be like, what the hell? The Germans would go off. Like, they really would. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I finally came up with one. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for support, Josh. And we have an $8 super chat from Live, Laugh, Toast, and Bath. And those bats do be toasting. But beyond that, Live Laugh Toasterbat said, a good day for the Western world, a bad day for Poodler. And take one from the chat and LSA. And I completely agree with you. Live Laugh Toaster Bath. And I got to say, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make it possible for the Western Day to hear about such a great day today. And we will make sure to take one from the chat. And this one goes to JMP Traveler. And JMP asks, has Wagner returned to Russia? And yes, they have. We understand that some elements of Wagner are currently in the Kursk Oblast. Not many of them. It's maybe a few companies. But they're still coming in at the moment. We're expecting maybe a battalion or two will be in Kursk here within the next week or two. So the answer to that is yes, they are. And with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support. Live, laugh, toaster bath, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we got a $6 super chat from Crepe. And Crepe said, what is the situation in the South? Putin sits when he makes number one. Huh, okay, all right, that's new. I wish Matthew was not sick right now, because I would love to have someone to bounce that off right there, but I'm having to do it in complete silence. But beyond that, I got to say thank you so much for the support. And the situation in the South is okay. I mean, it's really a stalemate down here in Zaporizhzhia and Harrison, but the Ukrainians are conducting the Kinburn Spit offensive, and that seems to be doing something. So that's pretty cool. So with that, I hope that kind of addresses that fairly well, at least the best I know. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we got a $5 super chat from Mayor of Spin City. And Mayor of Spin City said, thank you for always giving us updated and reliable news. Slava Ukraini and the United States clink in Ukraine. And that little clink is supposed to be the toast that you do with beer jugs or beer glasses. Not jugs, not jugs. None of us are alcoholics here. It's just glasses. But beyond that, I got to say, thank you so much for support, Mayor of Spin City. And thank you so much for enjoying the updated and reliable news. And I thank you so much for supporting it, so that way we can keep it going. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. Thank you so much once again for support. And we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from none other than a channel legend, LSA Sergeant Figment. Hey! And a huge shout out to LSA Sergeant Figment. A huge thank you so much for the support. And LSA Sergeant Figment said, do it now, take Kursk, or something like that. He said do it in an Arnold voice, but still, thank you so much for the support, LSA Sergeant Figment. And I do say they should do it. They should do it now. They should take Kursk. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well, because it is folks like you, LC Sergeant Figment, who've helped to make this channel possible for so long, and have helped us to be around to the point we can report on the Ukrainians invading Russia instead of Russia invading Ukraine. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Robert Johnson. And we also have a $5 super chat from Marc-Andre Brunet, a $4 from Bravada, a $3 super chat from Cross, a $2 super chat from Rad NFO. And I got to say, a huge thank you to all 5 of y'all for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. All 5 of y'all didn't throw in comments, but the support does help this channel to keep on running and makes this thing possible. If it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here tonight. And I got to give y'all a huge thanks for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And the next one goes to Teslins. And Teslins threw in a 5. Hey, and he said, take a livey. And we will take a livey, Teslins. And the live chat, it goes to Fumaz and Fumas, Fumaz. Fumaz kind of sounds cool. But Fumas said, how long do you think Ukraine can keep pushing before Russia can throw more bodies than Ukraine has bullets again? I think that's probably going to be coming in about a week and a half, to be entirely honest. I think the window that the Ukrainians are going to be having for a really big offensive to reach Kursk is getting smaller and smaller, because the Russians really are starting to freak out at this point and throw everything they have into Kursk. So I would say maybe a week and a half, and then we're probably going to see the front lines completely stabilize, and then it'll take an incredibly long time for the Russians to ever be able to try and push Ukraine back out of Russia, in my opinion. And so with that, I hope that does address that livey fairly well, Teslins. Huge thank you to you once again. And with that, we have a $5 super chat from Intel Talks. And Intel Talks said, did Matt possibly eat a poisoned Russian bug? Putin possibly send it to him due to your team's reporting. Maybe, maybe so. I mean, so many people, they wish us well out there, and I would assume that maybe it has something to do with that. I don't really know. I think Matthew may have come down with Zubog, but that's kind of weird, because Matthew has not been around anyone outside of this family, including myself. I haven't been either for a good while now, maybe like a few weeks. because we've been busy here just waiting for news to happen and getting ready to cover it. So we haven't really been able to get out that much. But it sounds as though Matthew got the bug. I don't know if it's a Russian bug, but it is certainly some kind of a bug. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you once again for support Intel Talks and helping the channel to keep it running. And we also have a 5 from Barry Woodward, who said, I'm disgusted with the present stance of all countries on planet Earth. What an effing mess pool. May freedom remain ultimately on top. And that's exactly what the Lee Spring Army is here for, Barry Woodward, is to make sure that freedom and the Western world will remain on top. I gotta say, in my personal opinion, I'm not really that happy with some actions by Western countries. I feel like they're not assertive enough in the defense of our own liberties and freedoms that many take for granted here in the Western world. But everything can't be perfect, and I don't really hate the Western. Oh, well, I certainly don't hate the West for that. I still love the West because it's my home. It's where we are all from, really. It's where we all live. But there are some ways that it can improve. But the best thing to realize is that the Western world is the best part of the world there is. And while there's room for improvement, we still live in a very great place that we can all be very proud of. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one, which comes from Izio007X. And Izio said, hot dogs or hamburgers, enforcers? Well, I might not be able to speak for Matthew, but I would always have
Hamburger.
Hamburger, cheeseburger, Big Mac, a Whopper. I would have to go with a hamburger as well. The hot dogs, you just don't cut it. The hot dogs are very abrasive, harassing in some instances, and have almost killed us sometimes. So I would generally have to say I'm largely for the hamburger, because the hamburger has never done anything to me. It's only been good. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $5 super chat from Leora Avagile. And Leora said, hey, enforcers, there is a certain guy who loves to eat hot dogs that wishes they had the views right now, lol. Oh, I thank you so much for the support, Leora Avagile, and that is very true. While I put out the fakest laugh I could right there, that is very true. I'm not going to make too much of a comment on it because, you know, it is what it is. It's really a whatever, especially when you're dealing with someone who has like 300 viewers and like gets 3,000 views. It really is what it is, but it's always funny to always hear them make it very clear that they only care about views, subscribers, and the money they make. And that's something that's become very clear over time. We never worked in that metric originally starting off on YouTube, but considering that that person has made it their life's goal and objective to try and steal our viewers, our subscribers, and our supporters, the Super Chat supporters specifically, from this channel, it ends up becoming a bit of a thing. Also, when they sit there, you know, and they harass us and dox us and try and threaten us with death and physical harm over email and do all kinds of crazy stuff, it really becomes something where you kind of can't sympathize for them at all, because they truly are a despicable person, a very sad person at that. And that's all I really got to say about that. And then, you know, and what's so stupid is that they go from being the aggressor for 2 years to whenever they get the chance, they go, oh, help me, I'm just a helpless victim. It's like, you know, we wouldn't have picked a fight with, well, we didn't pick a fight with them. We wouldn't be riffing on you right now if you hadn't tried to get us killed multiple times over about the past 2 years. And we wouldn't really have a problem with anyone else if they hadn't joined in on that. But sadly, people out there in the world, they don't see it that way. Because apparently, you know, when we get doxxed and threatened with death, that's perfectly fine. But whoa, hey, don't rock the boat by saying that some of these people are not as nice as they seem, considering that they supported someone who was trying to get you killed not too long ago. Whoa, you're rocking the boat. But anyways, still, with that, I thank you so much for the support, Leora Avagile, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is another one from Izio007X, who threw in a 5 and said, hello from El Salvador. Hey, that's really cool, El Salvador. We actually were talking about El Salvador a while ago. We were actually talking about that place out here. Where is it? Let's see here. You can see it. Here we go. We were talking about Sekot. We actually talked about that on this channel a while ago, because that is something that is actually a really interesting thing, kind of an interesting thing about El Salvador, about how the government's been working down there and stuff lately. We actually talked about that about a week ago on stream, and it was actually a really interesting conversation. But still, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for being one of our few viewers from El Salvador. That is incredibly cool. And so, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we got a $5 super chat from Samuel Penrod. And Samuel Penrod said, any chance of rabble-rousing in Dagestan and Chechnya? Oh, that rabble-rousing. There's a decent chance that can happen again. Every once in a while it pops up. Not really from savory groups, mind you, but it's against the Russian government, so you kind of gotta, you kind of just gotta let it, what happens, happens, that's the best way I can explain it. But I don't think there's going to be any chance of rabble-rousing really, really soon, because they have to replenish their forces, numbers, and supplies. So it'll probably happen again maybe in a few months to a year, but there is a chance of more rabble-rousing happening down in the Caucasus, it's the Caucasus Mountain area. I don't know why in the world I always say Caucasus and I have to correct that, but there is a chance that it can happen again in the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to a $2 super chat from none other than LSA Sergeant Figment. And thank you so much, John Doe, for the kind words. Thank you for enjoying the channel and welcome. And also, LSA Sergeant Figment said, LSA, hit the like button, and that's in order. And a huge shout out to LSA Sergeant Figment. Hit that like button, folks. We've gotten up to 4,700 likes, an incredibly high amount of likes and lives as well. We have a lot of life here. But still, huge thank you to you once again. Please make sure to hit the like button, everyone. And please make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. We run these streams pretty much every single day of the week. 6 days a week, except for Monday at the exact same time every single night. But still, a huge thanks to you once again, LSA Sergeant Figment. And with that, we are on to the next one, which is a $20 super chat from Squilly. And Squilly threw in, I believe, their first super chat ever, and they did. And Squilly said, love, lav, toaster, bath. Made me pee my pants a little bit. And hey, I like to hear it, Squilly. Apparently, you might be new, because Live, Laugh, Toaster, Bath, he's been around for a while. I mean, a long time. Maybe like a couple of months. And it is always the funniest thing. We didn't really know what to do with that name when we first read it off. Like, we didn't know whether we could read that all the way off or not. But now we know. It's something that is very interesting. And so, I gotta say, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. It means a lot that you wanted to support the channel for that. And also, I love to hear that you got a crack out of the Live Laugh Toaster Bath's name. It is a really funny one, I'd have to admit. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are now moving on into the next one. Also, really quickly, I'm going to address this one really quick because I saw this and I was like, that's a really stupid thing. Someone said, let's see. Someone said, mispronouncing people's last names who continue to give you money is really pissing me off. We don't do that, like, deliberately. Like, if we mispronounce y'all's name, you can just throw in a live chat to have that corrected. You know that, right? Like, that's kind of a stupid statement because like this viewer in particular that just got banned, you've been here for 2 years. You've seen us grab a lot of this stuff out of the live chat. Like when someone's like, actually, my name's pronounced this way, and we grab it out of the live chat because we read every single live chat. So that's a really stupid assumption to make that we do that for that reason. Like, I wouldn't bring that up if that wasn't so stupid that it really, like, baffled me that someone would say something like that, knowing that you've been around this long and seeing that we've done a lot of things correcting people's names out of the live chat. Why would you try and say something stupid like that? That's beyond me. I don't know. But like others say, I wish you well, and I hope you have fun elsewhere. But as y'all can see, like the dead gentleman was saying, well, I was saying to the dead gentleman, yeah, just can't make folks happy. There's going to be someone to complain over everything. And if we mispronounced Leora Avagile's last name, which I don't think we did, but if we did, we will correct that, and they can just throw in a live chat to have that corrected. Then whoops, it will be corrected. We can just read the live chat and get a correction. But to say something that stupid, it's like people have corrected it in the live chat before, and we've corrected their last name pronunciation. That's really dumb. That's a really, really dumb claim to make. Like really, it stops me in my track. I almost end up being in a circular kind of a conversation with myself because I'm like, how the hell can you even come to a stupid conclusion like that? Like, most people don't throw in super chats for that. They just say in the live chat, hey, I actually pronounced my name this way. And then we're like, oh, sorry. Well, we pronounce it that way. Or we ask people to clarify stuff in the live chat, like, did we mispronounce your name? Let us know in the live chat. And then they correct it. That was a stupid comment all the way around. But anyways, moving on from that, we are now moving on to a $2 super chat from Mike Sontag. A huge thank you for your support. A $1 super chat from Antidote, and a $1 super chat from High Sea King. And I got to give all three of y'all a massive shout out for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like y'all who helped make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing running day in and day out. While y'all didn't throw in comments, a huge thanks to y'all once again, and a huge thanks to y'all for supporting this channel and helping to make our operations on a day-to-day basis possible. Whether it be $1 or $500 in the super chat, every single one counts, and we are massively appreciative for all of y'all helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on, and also Leora Avagile said, Avagile, I'm so sorry, just pronounced the G as a G sound. So instead of Leora Avagile like it's a J, it's a Leora Avagile like it's a G. Sorry about that, Leora. For some reason, I messed it up. I'm probably going to mess that up again. Huge apology if I do. Usually Matthew's the one to read off the names in the super chats, and then he says it correctly, and so then I know how to say it. But it's a huge apology. But still, with that, there we go. But anyways, moving on from that and into the live chat segment, we are going to be a little bit pressed for time. We're not exactly going overtime at this moment, but Matthew is sickly and quite feeble. I'm just kidding. Matthew's not feeble. He's very strong. Like, legitimately, he bought like a punching bag thing. He was out there slamming that thing the other day. I mean, I was like, damn, you go. But beyond that, I gotta say that we are going to be moving on into the live chats. We're going to answer the Morse code Dakotas, and then we're going to be addressing 3 live chats or so, and then we're going to be rounding out tonight's stream. But before I do, I got to say a huge thanks to everyone who has been watching so far. If y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to comment and subscribe, because it makes us happy to see. It helps this channel be possible by spreading out other folks and letting them know about it. And we love to have everyone here. As many people as we can have here. Y'all are more than welcome to be here, and we enjoy having y'all here. But with that, we have the Morse code decoders of tonight's stream, which is Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Benu, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, and David Millsaps. And they said the LSA Signal Corps reports the Morse code today to read: Ukrainian forces keep pushing the drive to Kursk. It's going exceedingly well, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And that is the sound of money. And y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And I got to say a massive shout out to all of y'all for keeping this, keeping the Morse code channel going. The Morse code message, while I try and figure out how to say that, because I screwed it up twice, and now the third time was the charm. But I got to thank y'all for getting that correct. Y'all have gotten that correct day in and day out. It's an incredibly amazing thing, and I got to say, y'all got it dead on the nail once again tonight. And so with that, huge shout out to y'all once again. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night, which goes to Frostbright Productions. And Frostbright said, is it okay to say that the current situation with Ukraine pushing further into Russia feels like a Hunger Games in-game moment and Putin as President Snow? LOL. Kind of seems like it a little bit. I actually didn't read that last book in the Hunger Games series. I read the first one and the second one. Never read the third for some reason. I don't know why, because I really liked that series when I was growing up, but then I just didn't read the third one for some reason. But beyond that, I would have to say, yeah, kind of. It kind of does seem like that a little bit, although I sadly never read the third book. But I hope that that does address that fairly well, Frostbright. Really good question, though. And also, I didn't see you get him tonight. You know what I'm talking about. I didn't see you get him, but I'll begin to laugh if I do. I think Matthew was smacking the bots so quick I didn't see it. But with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night, which is from AF Kaplan. And AF Kaplan said, if Putler is cornered in Moscow by the armed forces of Ukraine, do you think that he would throw himself out a window to avoid being captured? Maybe. I mean, usually people like him that are in that kind of a vein, kind of like Hitler, they usually end up offing themselves before they can get offed. That's usually the general situation, unless if you're Nicolae Ceausescu, and then you end up getting gunned down outside of some small like storage unit out in the middle of nowhere in Romania. He was like the only one that was the exception, but he tried to flee and he was caught trying to flee. So he's like the only exception. Yeah, I think Putin probably would do that, in my honest opinion, because he just seems like that kind of a person. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, AF Kaplan. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night, which goes to Dale Atlanticus. And Dale Atlanticus threw in a very good question. Dale said, I heard a rumor today that Zelensky was very upset with his armed forces today, muttering something about he told them to take Crimea, not the Kremlin. Is this true? LOL. Hey, that's a pretty good question. That's a funny one, too. I like that joke. That was a good one. I would say he probably actually was 100% behind greenlighting the Russian offensive, or the Kursk offensive, because Crimea is a tough nut to crack at this point. I mean, you have to either cross the Dnipro River, or you have to get through the Surovikin line, which still poses a major issue, a offensive issue for Ukraine, because it's such a well-defended line. It's got minefields upon minefields, backed by dragon's teeth, backed by defensive trenches. It's a very hard one to get through. So I would say, in my opinion, probably he actually wanted them to go to Kursk quicker than Crimea, because it would be easier to capture parts of Russia than it would be Crimea. But with that, that is the final question of the night, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. And I've got to say a huge thanks to all of y'all once again for watching. It has been absolutely incredible to have all of y'all here. Crazily enough, we've gotten exactly 100,000 views as we're rounding out this stream about 3 hours and 20 minutes in. It is folks like y'all who watch this channel every day that really give us the purpose to keep this thing running. I got to give a huge shout out to everyone who hit the like button, all 4,800 of y'all who hit the like button. I got to give a huge shout out to about the 14.5 thousand people who were here at the peak tonight and watching this channel. I got to thank y'all so much for watching it. I got to give a huge shout out to those super chatters that we had tonight. All of y'all who helped to support this channel and help it to keep on running. Y'all make it possible for this channel to be financially possible. Y'all help to support us so that we can make a living doing this and keep doing this each and every day. I thank everyone greatly for the part y'all played tonight in helping this stream to be possible and giving us the inspiration to come on another day and run this news again. If you're new to this channel and you've made it all the way to the end, you're a trooper. It's been almost 3 hours and 20 minutes, and that's an incredibly long time. I've got to say, if y'all did enjoy, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to have new subscribers. We'd love to have new people liking the channel. And also, on top of that, we are getting really close at this moment to reaching 262,000 subscribers, a really big milestone, and I hope that we are able to see that happen very soon. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Army shall